Okay, I think that's it. I think we're on. The worst part about YouTube streaming is they never really tell you when something's going, if you know what I mean.
I don't. We're YouTube streaming. Thought we were on Discord.
Well, yeah. Yeah, we're on Discord, but I invited you to come on a stream and talk to me about what's going on.
You mean on YouTube? I'm
Yeah,
cool with
yeah.
that, I guess.
Oh, I thought you already knew what was happening.
No. I just looked at your profile. I saw that you have a YouTube, but I didn't know you wanted to come on.
Yeah. I remember saying in the tweet, I was like, "Yeah, I'll start a stream and we'll talk about the situation."
All right,
Oh, well,
sounds good.
I'm sorry, dude.
No, that's all right. I thought you were just some guy on Twitter. Then I saw that like you had a YouTube and everything. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. So
90K,
what's going on,
not
man?
bad.
What's going on?
So we saw the same. We saw the same debate with Vosh and Tim Pool. I don't know what your background is. Some people were saying that you're like. No, actually, you said that you're kind of like a little bit of a troll, but you seem sincere and like wanting to discuss it. So
Okay, well, I will admit, first of all, like first and foremost, I'm a troll on Twitter.
Gotcha.
Because Twitter fucking sucks. I don't know if you know this, but
Oh yeah,
Twitter
I don't know what we're doing there for
yeah,
sure.
Twitter's a shithole, dude. I basically use it just to shitpost. I might like post a real opinion now and again, but for the most part, I'm just shitposting on Twitter.
Gotcha.
And I will also admit, I have not watched the full 4-hour debate yet. I've watched about half of it.
Yeah, we're cool. I haven't watched the entire thing either.
Yeah, it's
I
long,
cut it. I
man.
cut it near the end, pretty much.
Yeah, it's long. But I do generally know what Tim Pool stands for. I've talked to him.
Yeah.
I've talked to him once or twice. I do generally know what Vosh stands for, and although I haven't spoken to Vosh, he has treated me quite poorly in the past. So I already
watch both.
I don't watch both. No, I don't watch both, but I do know what they're about.
Gotcha.
No. But like Vosh has kind of treated me like shit in the past, so I have like a personal bias against him, and I understand that it's a personal bias, right? So I don't like when I say something negative about Vosh, I understand that I might be personally biased because he has treated me personally poorly. But it's more in general, like, if we're just talking about the ideas, I don't think his ideas work. You know, I don't think socialism works. You know, and I'm not a right wing person. I consider myself, just slightly left of center. I consider myself a liberal. You know, I'm just
gotcha.
not a socialist.
Okay,
I'm just not a socialist.
So you were being sincere about being liberal. Like,
yes.
I thought you were just kidding, because I know a lot of his audience, Tim Pool's audience, seems to be, I don't know anything about Tim Pool. Like, I used to follow his brother, the Reactor. I thought he was funny. Tim Pool, I don't know anything about. I just hear from Vosh that he's like a grifter. I know that he's like a popular figure. And the bits I saw in his stream, to me, he just kind of seems, I don't know, a little bit reactionary. He didn't really come off as a bad dude. But I know that Vosh says that, it's all grift and it's all whatever. So approaching it from that angle, wait, I just got is that an announcement from you? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I was just tweeting the show out. Yeah, the stream.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not really sure what it is that he believes, but he seems to claim that he's a liberal, and I just plain don't see it that way. His audience doesn't seem to be comprised of any liberals. I don't see why he would have so much of a draw with people who aren't liberals if he isn't liberal. And the way that Vosh has pretty much pointed out, or described it rather, is the way that it actually works is that you're not what you claim you are what you demonstrate you are. And if like you're pretty much just going on all the right-wing talking points, and like mostly agreeing with them, then that's what you are. You're just a right-winger. And that's why he, I think, claims that he's a grifter. So I was approaching this from, well, you're claiming that you're a liberal, so and you seem to be defending Tim Pool, so I thought that's what you were. It doesn't seem that way though.
Well, in my opinion, like I don't watch too much Tim Pool. However, I do think he goes down the boogaloo hole a little bit too much. Like I do not think America is on the verge of some kind of a revolution or a civil war or something like that. I think he might be like, and this is probably why he's so popular right now. He's really pushing like certain headlines that really do well with the YouTube algorithm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, seems so.
Yeah, but I mean Vosh does that too. So like you can't really hold that standard to only one of them. They both kind of have that same thing. Like fuck. They'll put like Sargon destroyed, and then the actual situation is that there was no destruction, but that's good for his audience and it's good for the algorithm. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
fair
both
enough.
of them do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But the thing is, like when we're talking about liberals, what do you mean by liberal? Because there's definitely different ways people use liberal. Like the right, when the right wing says liberal, they're generally talking about like progressives and
Yeah,
socialists, and those aren't liberals.
yeah.
And then like oftentimes the left will say the libs as well. Like it feels like people don't know what liberal is. So when you say liberal in this situation, what are you talking about?
Yeah, no, I think you're completely right. It's like it. I used to think that it was a lot more straightforward than this. I thought pretty much, hey, you're a Democrat, you're a liberal, hey, you're a Republican, you're not, and there seemed to be some people who claim to be libertarians who were kind of in the middle. That's the way that I understood things until Trump. And pretty much right now, I'm subscribed to the way that Vosh describes it. Like there's like sock dems like Shu, and then there's like socialists like him. Then there's like communists like they're on YouTube. I don't really know what Tim Pool is in that context. To me, pretty much just everything right of me seems kind of vaguely wrong. So that's just my bias. Like it's hard for me to understand where people come from. So like the reason why I wanted to talk to you
Mhm.
is because I have a problem. I have a I have a hard time understanding when people agree with people like Tim Pool, and like even just surface level.
Mhm.
So
Well, I
I
mean,
think
like,
there's
no, go
okay.
ahead.
Yeah, go
Sorry, go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I didn't have anything to say. It's cool. I'd rather
Okay.
go on.
Like there are times when I've agreed with Tim Pool from like clips that I've seen because I don't regularly watch him. There are times when I've agreed with Sargon. There are also times when I've agreed with people
Sargon.
on Sargon of Akkad. Yeah, there are times when I've agreed with people on the left, and there's also times when I've disagreed with those people. So, I mean, I guess that makes me a centrist, but I consider myself a liberal in the classical sense of the term. Like, you go back and you read like what John Locke wrote about liberalism. The beginnings of liberalism. I put myself there, and I think that's why people on the far right call me a communist all the time, even though I'm not. And people on the far left have called me a fascist or a reactionary or something, even though I'm not really that either. You know, I am
Okay.
I am what liberal used to mean, I guess, if that's what makes sense.
All right. I mean, I guess I'm not so interested in isms. I more care about like, what you actually think. Because I mean, it's hard for me to like really understand where people come from with their isms. I mean, just to give an example, I have a background in art, and when Jordan Peterson talks about it's what is the thing that he loves talking about, postmodernism. Like I have
Yes.
a really hard time understanding what the hell he's talking about because that's not what postmodernism is to artists. But I can understand him within his context. Like but it's difficult. Especially if like you're just jumping into a conversation with someone. So I mean, let's talk about I guess
Like policies, I guess.
the stream. Like
I thought we were gonna talk about our ideas, like, but okay. Like,
oh no, yeah, that's good. I was gonna like jump off what we saw, I guess, in the
okay. Well, I
in the
mean,
stream that like we both agree with or disagree with.
Well, I mean, if the conversation is boiling down to our ideas, like I'm not somebody who wants to overthrow capitalism, if that makes sense. I I do think that there is probably some kind of a justification for taxation providing a safety net, but I don't want to see capitalism gone. I don't want to see private property seized, that kind of thing. So that's why I consider myself a little bit left of center, but I'm not a socialist. Now, like I've heard that called social liberalism. I think some people consider that social democracy. I'm really not sure. But in terms of the actual policy, you know, let's not dismantle capitalism. I think that'd be a bad thing. But if we're going to be funding healthcare with taxes, I think that's probably a good idea.
You mean like Medicare for all kind of thing?
I don't know what the Americans would do necessarily. I'm a
Oh,
Canadian.
okay. Sorry, are you Canadian?
Yeah,
Okay,
Canadian.
cool.
So like what we have in Canada works for the most part. There are some times when it seriously doesn't, but like wait times can be outrageous depending on where you live. Sometimes like people have died waiting for necessary surgeries because the system is a bit too inefficient. So there's serious problems. Like it's not like it's perfect. Like healthcare for all is not the golden bullet to the problem, but at the same time, it's better than no healthcare, right? It's better than just
Yeah.
fucking dying or going bankrupt. You
Well,
know,
as a Canadian, can I ask you, what's your impression of American healthcare from what you've seen, like in news or whatever?
um, better if you can afford it. Definitely better than Canadian healthcare if you can afford it. But the if you can afford it part is the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. So, like for you, it's just you do consider that it's worse in Canada when it comes to having to afford certain things.
Uh, it's a balancing act, I think. Like if you're poor, you're not going to go bankrupt getting healthcare in Canada. You still might die waiting for it to happen, but you're not going to go bankrupt. Um, if you're rich, if you have a lot of money, or like not even rich, like if you're like middle class, you have enough money, you're making like a six-figure salary, um, yeah, American healthcare is better. Like just straight up, you can pay for it, you can figure it out. It's better. But if
Ah,
you're
you
but
just
if
said
you're
out. No, I believe you're Canadian.
wait, why do you believe I'm Canadian?
No, because you just said out. You said it out.
Did I? I don't even know, man. I don't even know. I don't even know. I don't know what
That's
my
funny.
accent sounds like.
True. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. All right. Well. All right. So let's discuss, I guess. Um, so you're uncomfortable with overthrowing capitalism, but
yes.
I think that a lot of people who say it in a way that kind of betrays like a little bit of
I'm sorry, you cut out there.
com.
Can you restart your sentence? You cut out.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Um, so you say that you don't want to overthrow capitalism,
Hmm.
but um, I think that when people say that, generally it's the way that my dad would say it. My dad's Cuban. He's he knows communism.
Hmm.
Not a fan. Um, fear of that, fear of the authoritarian kind of communism that just wants to come and like seize your shit and then just basically run it to the ground, which is indeed what happened in Cuba, right?
Hmm.
um and from that point of view, it's a little hard to, I mean, when historically we've had so many examples of what bad communism looks like, it's kind of hard to push for like an ideal form of socialism, right? I know that a lot of people, like even on Bosch's side, they look at what's on in Latin America, and they're like, oh, like the reason why it hasn't worked in Latin America, even though they say that it's working in certain cases that I disagree with, the reason why it's not working in Latin America, or whatever, is because the U.S. interference and everything, and there has to be a degree to that I might agree with. But I'm from Mexico, and like I see what's going on with the president there, and he's basically just like a socialist version of Trump in that he's a populist. He doesn't know anything. He's ignorant as fuck. He'll uh, he'll play to people's emotions. He'll like read the room and then just say something dumb that people will agree with, and that's why he's popular. And that's populism. That's not really like policy. That's not really theory. So socialism can very much go wrong. So even I am hesitant when I listen to people like Vosh and they're like expounding on like just all the greatness of socialism. Like I've seen it be done wrong, and like I said, my dad's Cuban. I live in Miami with tons of Cubans who can tell you with details and anecdotes like exactly how bad their life was. That said, though, uh, I think that there's a case for doing something different. I think that a lot of people are living pretty miserable lives under capitalism. And I do think that capitalism builds a lot of perverse incentives for people that are really hard to separate from just capitalism itself. And I think that's what I want to see gone. And I don't really know what like the reason why I'm watching so much Vosh lately is precisely because I want to see if his ideas convince me that that's the way to go forward.
Well, I guess there's two things there. We can kind of tackle them one at a time. Yeah. So regarding socialism, like when I hear somebody say, just because we've seen all these bad instances of communism doesn't mean that there can't be good instances of socialism. To me, that kind of sounds like someone saying, "Oh, just because there's been all these bad instances of fascism doesn't mean that there can't be good instances of fascism." And it's like, well, hold on. At some point, there has to be something wrong with the fundamental principles that we're talking about. It's not just implementation. And I
Well,
think, and I do think that there's something fundamentally wrong with socialism.
I kind of agree with you there, right? Like I said, it's really hard to just be like, oh, well, no, socialism definitely can be done great. It's just that we failed here and here and here and here. That said, the difference in context in that fascism is pretty much about exterminating what is like what's seen as the perceived threat, right? It is an inherently violent ideology. Socialism is supposed to be about giving power to the people. So one is inherently like hierarchical, and basically if you're not at the top, you can't thrive in that environment. And the other one, at least theoretically, is we can all thrive in this environment. So I get what you mean by like saying that, like, oh well, there might be a way to make fascism work, as some people claim, but I think the results are inherently very different, like what they're pushing
I mean,
for.
only to a point. Like the whole the racialized aspect of fascism really only came out in Germany. Like Italy wasn't like that. Argentina wasn't like that. Like there. I mean, I'm not here just so we're clear. I'm not simping for fascism. I'm not a fascist. I don't like fascism.
Yeah,
But
you
I
don't
don't.
strike me as one.
But I don't think the whole racial thing is unique to fascism. I think that's unique to Nazism. There's like non-racialized fascists that are still just as bad. Like that's not mince words. They're still just as bad, but they're bad for different reasons. It's not like a racist thing. It's more of like a state worship and total control thing. When Mussolini said, I think it was nothing outside the state, nothing against the state, everything within the state. He basically meant that the government should have a hand in every single aspect of human interaction. If you can do anything, the government should be involved somehow, which sounds ridiculous to me. But that's the core of what fascism is, I think. So it's not necessarily racial, but it's still quite bad.
Oh, so it's the authoritarianism that you don't like. And I imagine that's also what turns you off to just like what we've seen of socialism, that it's always authoritarian socialism.
Yes, and I actually do think that like when Vosh calls himself a libertarian socialist, um, either he's lying or he doesn't understand what he's talking about. Because I don't think there can actually be a libertarian socialism.
Hmm.
It's really easy. You have like democratic socialists, right? They want to seize the means of production, but they want to do it democratically. They want to vote for it, right? Well, when you vote yourself somebody else's property, and the owner of that property says, "No, fuck off, it's mine." Like it, I mean, your vote means nothing at that point unless you're willing to back it up with force. You know, force always comes into play. You will always have to aggress on somebody who doesn't want to go along with the idea for socialism to work.
Hmm.
At least that's how I see it. I don't know. How do you see it?
Well, let me say this. I I am not certain of what anybody really is pushing. Like, I don't really understand. Like, Vosh, when he says that you can just dissolve the state, I I I I think that he knows what he's talking about. I haven't watched enough of his videos to fully understand how he thinks that can be implemented or how that would work. Um, but to go off of something different, there's a really good book called "Why Nations Fell,"
I think I've read
and
it.
it's
Yeah. Hold
oh,
on.
you have?
Let me just see if
Yeah.
it's the one I'm talking. If you're talking about why nations fail, the origins of power, prosperity, and poverty. Yes, I think I've read this.
All right. So, like, its premise is this, right? It starts out by saying, "Hey, these are all the things that people have normally said about why nations fail." Right? They'll say it's about um, the resources, or the location, or the culture. Various things like that. And the first part of the book goes by just like debunking, by saying like, "Oh, well, it's not about the culture because you've actually had." Uh, like they'll point out, here's a place where like the culture is the same but the outcomes are very different, and it's not location because here's two people separated by a river, and so it's like same location and everything, same resources and everything, and it turns out to be that it's something that seems to be structurally about the government that makes nations fail. And then the point of the book really is trying to demonstrate that what makes nations fail ultimately is when they become extractive institutions. So the main idea of the book is, you want your nation to fail, become extractive. You want your nation to prosper, you have to be inclusive. And inclusive here doesn't have the progressive kind of SJWE inclusive
Yeah, I know what you mean.
connotation.
Yeah.
It's whether like it's who does the country empower, right? Like, is it empowering a few who are just extracting from the community? Then that's going to fail. Is it something that is by the people for the people? That seems to generally prosper. And of course, then there's a question of like, okay, well, like in a historical context, right? Like everything has always failed. So has everything always been an extractive institution, or like have we just done a better job at times of being not quite so extractive? I think really that's what's going on, at least here in the U.S., for example. Like I think that we're becoming increasingly more extractive. And that's why we've seen both the rise of the left and the Trumpian right, let's say, or the Trumpist right.
Mhm.
Like these are both groups that are just like disaffected with. I mean, I would blame capitalism. I don't know what you'd posit, but I think it's basically the conditions brought forth by capitalism that are just making people miserable, feel that they're not adequately represented in their government. Yeah, I mean, we could go from that, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think about that?
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, the reason, I mean, I have read Why Nations Fail, but I kind of disagree with it, because I think there's actually, it's more like an arc, like a parabolic arc, where nations are stable if they're either extremely extractive or extremely not extractive. If they're only partially extractive, then they tend to fail. And the reason I think this is because, like, if you have like a nation that is like a banana, it was called a banana republic, where it exists only to export, basically.
Yeah.
Those nations, despite being, authoritarian and dictatorial, they're still stable societies, because the government basically they don't need the people. They don't need to care about the people's needs. They can just let them sit there and starve, and they do that. But the government itself is stable because they basically just export and ignore the people, and the people are too, they're too uneducated, they're too starving to actually be able to overthrow the government. And so that's why in those types of extremely tyrannical situations, you don't really get like a successful revolution. Meanwhile, on the other hand, when nations are almost not extractive at all, then you have, like, basically the keys to power are diversified enough that the nation is prosperous because the people are prosperous. If you have like an educated, if you have an educated workforce that's all actually working at a productive job, and then the nation taxes that, the nation becomes more prosperous as well. There's like a middle ground where you can't simply extract and let people die, but you're still authoritarian, but you still need the people to at least work, so they have to be at least a little bit fed and a little bit clothed and a little bit sheltered and a little bit educated. But then that's enough for them to also be revolutionaries. So I think, like, you have like two islands of stability, where you have the extremely successful democratic countries and then the extremely authoritarian countries, and they have stable governments. And then in between them is just constant revolution.
Well, it's interesting actually that you say the authoritarian countries, or rather, to mention that some authoritarian countries could be stable. I imagine you mean like the USSR and probably like China.
I wasn't thinking of a specific example, but they definitely fit the bill. Yeah, there are others too, of course. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, the thing about the USSR is it was really impressive to everybody who lived in that time, and like us. I mean, I don't know how young you are. You seem to be younger than I am.
I'm in my, I'm, just, I'm in my early 30s. Yeah.
Okay. No, then okay. So we're the same age. We might
Mhm.
we may forget that. It, like, to us, I guess it's easy to forget how impressive the USSR was in its time, right? But I've seen, for example, a lot of YouTube of like Bald and Bankrupt walking through Russia, or just in general, like people who live there. And what they show is that there's a lot of people who harken back to the good old days of the USSR.
Are we
Just
talking
because
Nazbols here?
no, we're talking about like people on the street. Just because in their experience, their lives were better when they had that kind of government. And if you go to China right now, I follow other channels that go to that are what that their content is based in China, like Lao 86 and Serpents Zere. And what they show is that the people there also support their government, despite the fact that it's pretty extractive. Just because they don't really have a frame of reference, they think that they're doing much better than they used to, and they ascribe all that to the Chinese Communist Party rather than to the fact that it's that the Chinese Communist Party decided to open up to the world, and they kind of became our source for all these products, right? And they think that they did this independently. Um, and so, but that doesn't make these like not extractive institutions, right? The USSR
Yeah.
eventually failed, and I think we'd probably agree that China is going to fail eventually.
I don't know about that. I mean, I hope it does. China is our generation's Nazi Germany, in my opinion. So it's probably
They're pretty bad, yeah.
yeah, they're pretty fucking bad.
I should qualify that. The people there are wonderful. I mean,
Well,
they
yeah, of
have
course,
some
of
weird
course. We're talking
ideas about
government.
stuff, but the Chinese Communist Party is just awful, and it's a real shame. They've thrown their entire like really interesting, rich culture just in the trash for the sake of what it is that they have now, and yeah, it's just bad all around. But I do think that because China is an extractive institution, unless they change, they'll see themselves fail. In fact, I'm not a Chinese historian or anything, but I think I understand that the reason why China even became a superpower in the first place was because they decided to let people like own their own businesses and everything. Like that was the start of it, right? Like um,
Yeah,
from what I've
they
heard.
had these zones, and I think that they were called like special economic zones, where they. I mean, you don't truly own your own business in China. The government still gets their cut, but like they allowed people to basically operate as if it were a closed capitalist system, which ended up producing results. Because say what you want about capitalism, it will, the market will actually produce results if you let it. You know.
Yeah, well, actually, that's something that I don't know, even if I disagree with Vosh, because I don't know really his stance. As I understand it, the market itself isn't capitalism. The market itself is kind of, this is something that I disagree actually with a lot of people on the left with, because the market is just a representation of like our disposition to trade things. And I don't think that like I don't really think that you can do away with the market. Like the market I think is just a representation of us trading anything, and any system in which we still need stuff from each other will have a market, even if it's not like what we understand right now as the capitalist market or whatever. um
Yeah, see, I
uh,
actually think that the market is capitalism. I think, and it's because this is a bit of a larger topic. I've noticed that people on the right, they call everyone on the left communists. Sargon does this, and I disagree with him on this. He shouldn't be doing this. There are big differences between the tankies and the libertarian socialists, and then you have the council communists, and you have the anarcho communists, you have the anarcho syndicalists. There are differences between these philosophies. They're not all just the commies. All right, but at the same time, I've noticed that people on the left, they don't understand the differences between like libertarian capitalism, or like rugged capitalism, or corporatism, or like the neoliberal conception of capitalism. These are all different things with different ideas of what capitalism should be. And really, the only thing that they have that binds them, even social liberals have like a different idea of capitalism, but it's still capitalistic. What capitalism is it's basically two rules. One is that you own the fruits of your labor. You own the produce of your labor. And two, you're allowed to trade that produce. That's it. And that is basically what the market is. So I do think the market is inherently capitalistic, but there are many different kinds of capitalism. And I think, where the right wing just sees the commies everywhere, the left wing sees the corporations everywhere. But that's not, you know, corporatism is not all of capitalism for sure.
but I don't think that corporate discontentment is just a matter of the left. I think honestly, the right could stand to be a little bit more paranoid um, about corporations, just
I
because
agree.
it
I
seems
agree.
like it seems like if we can agree with that, what we don't want is authoritarianism. I mean, there is inherent authoritarianism with monopolies just taking over economy, right? And
Hmm.
the right
Yes.
seems to be really good at rate of like a really strong central government, and not of just really powerful companies that kind of heavy hand you into very limited choices.
No, I completely agree. Yeah, like there's definitely a problem with corporations with monopolies becoming authoritarian. There's a problem with governments becoming authoritarian. Those are both serious problems, and I think the left and right both ignore, their own blind spots a bit too much for my taste.
Hold on one second. Hold on a second.
Sure.
The baby? Oh, it's yoga. I'll get out of here. Sorry, my kid has yoga.
Oh, your kid does yoga?
Hold on. Sorry, what's up?
Yep, no problem. No problem. Let me know when you're good.
Oh, take over his.
That is true. Somewhere in the chat mentioned that it's the right wing that's fighting big tech right now. The left wing seems to be ignoring them. That's true, from what I can tell. Maybe it's because the right wing is the one getting cracked down on by big tech right now.
Cracking down on big tech. Yeah, well, I do think that there's an aspect of the right now that is really paranoid about how much influence big tech has over their lives. So I think you're right about that. Probably, they seem to just not be as receptive to the fact that it's more than just big tech that's screwing them. But
oh yeah, no, I completely agree, man. The thing is, I cannot conceive, and I've tried. I've seriously tried. I've read theory. I've read I can't even remember the name of the book, but I had to read it when I was in university. I've read some Chomsky. I've read Marx. I've read a fair amount of Marx. I've read some other socialist writers that I can't remember right now. But I cannot see a socialism that is not authoritarian. Now, there's problems with capitalism. There's problems with the right wing, but every one of those socialist ideas that I listed eventually has to use force on people that don't agree with them. And I don't see how that doesn't become authoritarian, because all bureaucracy never voluntarily shrinks itself. So even if you are the most pure-hearted of democratic socialist and you have to get together some kind of armed force to take over corporations, that's not going away. There's no way that doesn't become the Soviet Union. That's my rant, by the way.
I mean, like I said, I've seen it. I've seen it be done wrong so many times that, I mean, I'm a little suspicious, or not suspicious. I don't know. It's a combination of disappointment and suspicion that the left is so bad at organizing, when like the entire point of the left is that you form communities. And they're really bad at organizing, and more than that, they're really bad at like agreeing to anything. And I think that's one of Bosch's sticking points with the rest of the lefties. Just, we don't form coalitions, we never get together, and yeah, if you don't form coalitions, how are you going to convince people that that one form of government is good and everything? And how are you going to heavy hand people to give up the perverse incentives created by capitalism? And I think that there's an aspect of just people are pretty unrealistic about complex systems. Like, the thing with complex systems is you always have to be watching out for bad actors. And the way that I see it is that any like big social system is really vulnerable to bad actors. I mean, we see it in social media, right? That's like all people, and it's really easy for trolls to get the upper hand. But I think we also see it, for example, in communism, like Cuban communism, where just the cronyism and the black markets and the people who just decide that they're gonna like not do anything just because they can, right? Like if your system is predicated on like, hey, everybody, like, let's divide up the labor and we all get to profit from it, but you don't have a good system of punishment, then you're kind of punishing the people who are working hard. And like that's not really conducive uh, to like a successful form of government, just because there's so many people just being able to do nothing. You know, there's no incentive for people to try anything. Um,
No, I know what you mean, and I do agree to a point, but like socialist and fascist systems are both very very centralized, and so there's like they're more prone to corruption. But if you have like a truly libertarian system, you know, where people are basically left alone to their own devices, I think it actually minimizes the amount of corruption that can take place. I think that's why the American Constitution is amazing, because it's a direct limit on government power. And as bad as corporations can be, they don't have the strength of the government. Like it's not like they're fielding private armies, at least not yet. Hopefully we never get there.
can you
But it's,
imagine though?
yeah, like that would be just as bad, like unironically. But the government has monopoly on force for a reason. It's because their power is constrained. You know, like it, what's a good example? Yeah, Nestle. Nestle might be a really shitty multinational globalist corporation, but you can always not buy their food. You know, you can always not contribute to what they're doing. Um,
Unless they're the ones only selling food around where you live, and then you
yeah,
pretty
true
much are
enough.
forced.
Yeah, there's also a problem with monopolies, and I think I think the government has a mandate to step in when a monopoly has been formed or a cartel has been formed. Um, but there's also definitely instances where government regulation creates the monopoly, and that can be just as bad.
Government regulation creates the monopoly.
Yeah. So here's a great example. Let's say that you have a large corporation,
Hmm.
and the government comes in and says, "Well, we're going to bring all of these new safety codes in, or all of these other standards, or something that you have to implement now to ensure that this workplace is running properly." And fair enough, because maybe the workplace actually is unsafe. Who knows? Like, there's definitely good reasons to regulate, but in practical terms, the regulations are simply money. That's all it is. It will cost you $500,000 to implement regulations. A big corporation can afford that. They don't care. It's just the cost of running their business. However, a competitor can't afford that. Some new competitor that might actually have a better product, or treat their customers better, or treat their employees better. If they're a small company, they can't afford the extra $500,000 the way that like a Walmart could, for example. So when government regulates the market too much, you actually get monopolies, because you have big corporations that can afford to spend the extra time and the extra money and the extra energy to implement regulations, while small businesses just go bankrupt.
Completely agree with you there, because yeah, I think that the go-to of a lot of people, not even going to say on the left, but just like, left of center, is the go-to is to create incentives, right? Like to regulate. And the thing is that's once again, when I hear people on Twitter or on YouTube talk about regulation, right? It seems pretty detached from like the way that it actually affects working class people. Like I've worked in a, you know, like a burgeoning startup, like by which I mean not like a tech startup. I mean like somebody opened a print shop, right?
Yeah.
And I got to see just the ways in which like the mounting expenses just made it really difficult to get that business off the ground. A business that was like growing by every other metric. It was just the mounting amount of paperwork, the mounting amount of stuff that you have to do to um, to be in line with all the regulation does make it a lot more difficult. Like for sure it does. And I don't think that a lot of people on the left, like I think they're either like too young to realize this, or they haven't worked in an environment where this is true. But I think a lot of people on the left like kind of dismiss that as like, oh, come on, you're just wanting to deregulate everything for deregulation's sake. And no, I think there's like really good reasons to deregulate some stuff, particularly because you can't on the one hand say that like, oh, regulation is good, and then also, oh, but there's corruption in the government. If the two
Yeah,
are
exactly.
true, then you get a lot of people who clearly are just creating regulation for the sake of extracting from the public, you know. And once again, you're walking into territory of like, this is an extractive institution in the guise of a democracy and like keeping people safe, but clearly this is just more for them than for you, kind of a thing, right? Especially because once institutions of any kind are established, they kind of don't want to change, right? Like they kind of want to keep doing and making money the same way that they always have been. So even when you like prove like, hey, you're regulating this, but it turns out that regulation is not particularly effective, and in fact it's creating like these other incentives for like this other bad behavior, and they're like, yeah, but you have to deal with it because it's the law. Like it, I really don't like that. Like I don't know to what extent I subscribe to everything that Vosh proposes, though I do think that he knows a lot more than I do, and I'm willing to trust him in that direction because that's the direction that I'm biased to like go to. But I do think that in general, broadly, what I see as like likely to work are anything that brings more transparency, and that is like more dynamic and easier to fail fast. Like in software engineering, right? Like there's this concept of you can either create like a big monolithic piece of software, right? Or you can create the small pieces and just have them interconnect with each other and make it so that if one part of the system fails, the rest of the system can keep going, right? Like, for example, if you have a website and you have your authorization, right? Like where you have to input your password and everything. If you make that a separate thing, right, and it fails, it might prevent a few new users from like signing up to your service, but it won't keep, you know, the people who are just like posting from being able to use your service, right? Like, so you have time until you fix it. And any system that I see working has to incorporate that. Like, you can't have something that is so like reticent to change that can be good for people at all.
But
And it needs to be transparent too.
well,
It
this
needs
is
to
the
be
thing.
transparent.
Like all the things that you're describing here, this sounds like deregulated liberal capitalism, not necessarily corporatism, because like international capitalism generally leads to corporatism, and that's pretty fucking destructive. But like, you know, your local shops, your local mom and pop businesses, local trade. You know, if you work for yourself or you work for a small company, um, I think that type of capitalism is much closer to this ideal than anything you'll find on the left.
Well, but I mean, maybe I have to think about it. But the reason why I find somebody like Vosh appealing, somebody like Thought Slime appealing, also, is not really straying far from what we're supposed to be doing here in the first place, right? Like, we are democratic institutions, supposedly, right? It's just that as the world has grown in complexity, right? As the ways in which our systems are failing have become more visible thanks to, you know, the internet and everything. Um, we've failed to adapt adequately to how difficult it is to keep a system going. Just to give you an example, here in the US, I imagine it might be similar in Canada, but we have this thing called the Great Compromise that it gets talked about in every history class, right? And it is when they were dividing up the government, right, and decided that it was going to be an executive branch, right, that's the president, and the judicial branch, that's just like the judges, and then there was going to be Congress, right? They were wondering, well, what's the right way to like decide who gets to represent or how many people get to represent the country, right? Like, or rather each state, right? Do we do it by population or we do it like, you know, equally? And the great compromise is simply, oh, well, we'll do both. Yeah, that's all nice and everything, except we haven't revised those numbers in a while, apparently, here in the US. And so it turns out that California is supposed to be getting like way more representation in the House based on population than they actually are, right? Like the Senate still works this way, but the House doesn't. And so people aren't being adequately represented.
So we're talking
And
about the Electoral College, right?
so that's actually a different thing.
Okay.
That's um, but that's also a good point, actually. Yeah, the whole thing that like it's never been easier to craft a system that does away with representatives, like where you can like vote directly, right? um and yet we still have this going on where we're essentially electing somebody to vote for us instead of just like voting directly, right? Like if we found a way to like make changes to our system or government that are more like expedient, right? We could have our system of government adapt better to the situation that arises, rather than just expecting like this 8 year process to like change an aspect of some law just so that some people 8 years ago can be like, oh yeah, see, I was right. Like it might be that by the time that something systemic changes, like it's either like no longer needed, or actually we needed it so bad that people have been doing really bad for the past 8 years or whatever. Like we need more expediency for sure. And I don't think that's an aspect that is like of the right or of the left. It's just that I understand that if the left is supposed to be kind of like a coalition of the people for the people, not completely just a leftist idea, of course, but the fact that people are the ones who are in power in the left is the thing that appeals to me. Like, at least theoretically, right? Directly influencing what goes on in the government. Like, really, the government is supposed to be just a representation of what the people want. Now, let me just like, as like an aside, right, say that it's a little hard to reconcile this that I'm telling you, right? That we should just like that a more direct democracy would be better, and that it represents what the people want better, because people are really uncomfortable when democracy works against them. Like I don't know if you've been keeping tab of like US politics here. We just got into our Supreme Court this lady who's like really unpopular with pretty much everybody who isn't a religious fanatic. And
I haven't been paying attention, and I actually don't think that that's accurate. Because whenever something like this happens, I do pay attention to it. It's a little bit of my job. So like I looked into her previous rulings and her policies, and she seems like just a basic conservative. Like I don't find her objectionable. She's just like, okay. Like she's like a constitutionalist. Like she's not going to create law out of cases. She's just going to judge by what the Constitution says, and that is the job of the Supreme Court.
I, well, ideally, but no. She has shown to have some believable bias. Like she's hyper fundy, and she has backed a bunch of like anti-gay things, and she just seems to like circulate in the with a lot of people who have very like churchy beliefs, like very, mind you, this is what I've heard. Here I do understand, if nothing else, that she's like really unpopular, right? But what's been the response of the left? They want to increase the size of the Supreme Court, which makes sense, right? Because like you want to regain control, you want to regain power. But like if you're speaking democratically, right? Like gerrymandering aside, and like unfairness of the system aside, right, and how broken it is and everything, like how are the people on the right supposed to feel when like their nomination just gets shat on, right, and is like actively trying to be made unimportant? Like sometimes you just win in a democracy, right? And like I think it's pretty anti-democratic to say like, oh, we're gonna assign more people to the Supreme Court, let's pass a thing so that the people who are there matter less. Like the real solution is no, let's just keep them for shorter time, right? Like let's not make this a lifetime appointment. Let's just appoint them for like a period of like, I don't know, like 8, 10 years or something like that, right? So that it's enough that they make an impact, so and all this stuff. Um, but not like, oh, let's just make the point of voting for them in the first place completely pointless. Like
I
that
actually
is not
disagree. I don't think that works. And the reason why is because you have to have at least one part of the government that is not elected and is not worrying about re-election. Because if they're constantly worrying about re-election, then they're constantly like they're playing to people's emotions rather than actually getting work done. I think that can be a problem. If you spend more time campaigning instead of working, that's a problem. And also, the point of them having no term limit is that they can't be influenced by like outside sources. You know, like if
shit. That's the entire point of them. Actually, you're right. uh, yeah.
like
No, you're right.
if they have to worry about being elected, then it's like, oh well, now I have to worry about if my opponent gets more money from a corporation for their campaign than me because I had a wrong ruling. Like there should be at least some part of the government that doesn't need to worry about the politics of the day and can judge long term. And I think the Supreme Court being that part makes sense, at least to me. Um.
Actually, yeah. I'm gonna agree with you. That does make sense.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's the reason why we came up with it in the first place, right? I'm just like engaging for the first time with this aspect of our government, like
Mm-hmm.
since school. So
No,
yeah,
I know
no,
what you mean.
you're right.
Like
There's a good point to that.
it's completely appropriate for the legislative branch to be elected, and frankly, should have term limits. Like there should be term limits on Congress people and on senators. The fact that there's not, I think, is a problem. That should be a change. But I think the judiciary is good as it is. But I mean, I'm a Canadian, so I can't like Americans don't like people who aren't American talking about their politics sometimes.
No,
That's how it seems to me as an outsider.
oh no, for me it's like I want to hear more about what other people think. Just because here in the United States, man, we're so insulated. Like we just think we're the hottest shit, and it goes for everybody. Like the lefties think that it's just the right, but they fail to realize that like a lot of the advances that we have, even on the left, like occurred here because of the specific conditions under which we were brought up, right? Like they think that like, oh, they see racism in the United States. Oh, that's yeah, there's no racism in like European countries because they're so progressive and everything. It's like, no, there's burgeoning is the racism over there too. And it's precisely because they haven't had to dealing with um, different cultures, in their uh,
I,
in their midst,
I don't know about that
and
because I think in Europe, like, there's a lot of discrimination that happens in Europe, but it's ethnic based. Like, and here's the thing, and it's not skin color based because America being a melting pot, they had nothing but skin color to fall back on when it came to being bigoted. But the Europeans, man, like the Italians are darker skinned than the Poles, but the Poles are treated so much worse by Europe than the Italians. There's definitely like ethnic bigotry that has been in Europe for thousands of years.
gotcha. No, what I meant more was, like a lot of people on the left here are convinced that racism is like an American thing. What they fail to realize is that we're living under one particular context, whereas, like for example, China is way more racist against Black people than we are, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's just that one, we're not focused on China and the way that they feel towards Black people, and two, it's also they don't have the same historical context, and you can kind of see it a lot on like the leftist arguments when they claim that one culture might feel a particular way about somebody appropriating a certain thing, and it's like that's a really U.S. centric view of them. Like that just because, like for example, like Chinese Americans or Japanese Americans are treated, fairly badly. Well, not even treated fairly badly, but like kind of like othered a lot here in this country. Doesn't mean that over in Japan or in China they're not like proud people, proud of their culture, who don't see themselves as victims, right? Like you're assigning victimhood to people who like don't feel that way, and that's kind of demeaning.
No,
I don't
I
know
know
if
what
that
you,
makes
no,
sense.
I completely agree. I know what you mean. Yeah. To go back a bit, yeah, we were talking about the what's the word? I lost the term again. Electoral college, right?
Right.
I actually think that makes sense too, because the thing with each local area is that it becomes like a cultural monolith, at least politically. Like I know that if you go to LA, you have all these different areas. You have like Little Italy, you have Chinatown, whatever it is, but like politically, it becomes very similar. Like the LA politics, despite those ethnic differences, becomes similar. And each area of the country, each town, each city, each village, each county, each state, they end up having their own brand of politics. But if the population is overwhelmingly centered, in just a few cities, like in LA, like in New York, San Francisco, Seattle, whatever it happens to be, and you
Miami.
have just a direct democracy, well, then you end up being ruled by the cities, and then all of those other places with their other unique small cultures have no representation at all.
No,
And
I mean,
and like
that's not what I meant. They're definitely, I mean, definitely we need to have our local governments, and then our bigger governments, and then our bigger governments. Basically, as far as complex system goes, right? Like the only ones that work really is the ones that are self-similar all the way down, right? And you do need to break it down in order so that basically each individual like branch is like serves itself first. Like we do need local governments because, like you said, like we can't just expect that everybody just like votes for like what happens in Wilmington or whatever. Like we don't know anything about Wilmington. I just pulled that city out of my ass. I have no idea if it's even the U.S.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So what am I going to be doing voting for them? No, I definitely think that we need to have like hierarchical governments. Sorry, I'm speaking that hard. That word is hard to say.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I can't say it either.
Yeah, but so we have these. We definitely do need to like break it down so that people are adequately represented within their own locale. It's just we could create like a new system. Like all I'm advocating for, mind you, is better systems that like are just more modern and that more people agree with. And the thing is that the difficulty in creating these kinds of systems is in the fact that, number one, we feel completely divided, right? Like we feel that when we hear a new ism, they're either going to be a new ally or a new enemy. And like it's I mean, you know that we're divided. I think that's what we're all talking about, right? And
Yes.
then second of all is that the systems that are in place aren't really conducive to defeating what I think is a healthy, like not suspicion, but like sexy skepticism, right, about the systems that we live in. Like that's why I see a lot of like the people who believe in QAnon or like even the Sandy Hook deniers, the Holocaust deniers, is I think that a lot of people are acting in bad faith, mind you. But I also think that for the people
Don't
who are
worry, man. There's
sincere,
a lot of denial of various like genocides on the left, man. Like there are Holodomor deniers out there. Fucking, I saw a clip of Vosh denying the Katyn massacre, and I was like, holy fuck, dude.
I'm
Like
afraid I don't know what that is. Sorry.
the Katyn massacre was a massacre of the Poles by the USSR that happened. You know that period where the Nazis and the Russians, they were friends for a bit, and they decided to divide up Poland. They kind of like took each half before the Nazis
Yeah.
attacked the USSR. Well, after they got control of their half of Poland, um, the communists began exterminating a chunk of the Polish population. They killed soldiers, they killed businessmen, they killed priests, and then they buried them all in the forest of Catan. I think it's Katyn. It's is it Catan? I don't know. I can't pronounce it. But they buried them in the forest, and then when the Nazis actually attacked the Soviet Union and started taking over parts of the Soviet Union from the West, the Nazis were the ones who first found evidence of the massacre. So the communists blamed the Nazis, but history has since shown, because just how things play out, that it was the communists that did it. However, you will often hear from people in BreadTube that it was that the communists didn't do it, the Nazis did, but we have evidence. It's just, it seems like if you hold some kind of an ideological position, there's going to be some kind of atrocity you end up covering up. Like I saw a clip of Noam Chomsky downplaying the Khmer Rouge massacres in Cambodia. Like somebody has their dumb fuck take. Everyone has at least one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I saw the clip of Vosh saying that. I was like, "What the fuck are you doing, dude?"
Well, yeah, no. I remember also the guy from the Young Turks got his co-host really mad because he was what was it, like the Armenian genocide, and he was talking about like, yeah, but we don't even really know if there was and like I guess she's from Armenia, and she was like, actually, yeah, no, okay, so that's the problem, right? Like in any complex system, you're gonna have a lot of areas of the system that like are just invisible to you, and maybe like finding the right context to understand what's happening there, or especially what has happened there historically, is going to be really difficult, right? So what you need is receipts, right? You need, like I said, transparency, and you need to be able to like look for yourself, like and see what evidence there is, right? Of course, that evidence is going to degrade with time anyway, which is the reason why even something as like overwhelmingly like known as the Holocaust still has deniers. Even like it's not just all bad faith deniers either. There are some people who just legitimately don't see that as proof, and like our world is already so complex and so difficult to understand that what we really need is to be able to show adequate proof to people who are curious, which is the thing that I was trying to say with QAnon or whatever, is
yes,
you have to accept that a part of the population is going to be insane. And so it's about like having their faith in the government, not like they need to have faith in the government too, right? So the thing that you can do is like be like, okay, well, if you think that you're gonna find a pedophile ring here in the Democrats or whatever, like come, dude. Like we'll invite you, we'll assign some guy to you, and just come investigate by yourself, kind of a thing, right? And I know that sounds kind of like, okay, well, how would we do it? But that's exactly it. We figure out a way, because they definitely do need to feel comfortable with the rest of the government, because of course, how are they gonna think like it? Regardless of how baseless and how insane their thought that like the Democrats here are like doing some pedophile ring and like eating children or whatever and stealing their life force, however insane that is, I do think that there's some people who legitimately believe that, and in order to disabuse them of that, like you need to kind of let them in, be like,
God damn it, my phone's going off. It's okay.
Like just here, man, like, kind of like come here and like investigate for yourself. Now, of course, if what you think that you're going to find there, you're not going to believe, there's always that problem, right? Like you don't have to take anything as proof. But here, I also think,
just give me a second here. Yeah, I have to actually respond to this really quickly. So I can still hear you if you want to talk, but I'll just be like I have my headphones on, but I gotta text this, so just give me a second, okay?
Sure.
But like you can keep talking though, because I can hear you. I have my headphones on.
Alrighty, so lost my train of thought, sorry. Yeah, so the hell was he talking about? Oh yeah, transparent systems. So the thing with transparent systems, right, is they're not very easy, and I especially think that we have a lot of stuff that the people on the right have been telling us makes them disbelieve in the systems in the first place that people, us on the left, just have not been receptive to. Mainly because we think that they're overblowing things in bad faith. I don't think it's all in bad faith, and like for example, the whole fake news thing, right? And that Trump gets treated unfairly. I think it's overblown for sure, but I think that there's an element of truth to that, and I think that not addressing it definitely is going to, make people on the right less likely to just listen to mainstream media, because mainstream media is playing to certain sensationalistic, headlines that just do nothing to advance the narrative. An example of this is some time ago. Is Melania the wife of Trump? She did something to the White House garden, and I find that hard to recall because who the fuck cares, right?
It was
But my
rose
wife-
bushes, wasn't it? Yeah, she like changed out some old rose bushes.
there you go. Okay, so yeah, the reason I found out about this is because my wife turns to me and she tells me, "Can you believe it? Melania is destroying JFK's wife rose garden," and I go, "Wait, what?" She's like, "Yeah, she's destroying the garden." I'm like, "I have no idea what that means. I have no idea what that is. Like, why are you talking about this, honey?" And she's just like, she's like immediately like just like really into it, right? And she's like, "No, I mean, imagine just how long we've had it and everything." And she goes and she starts ruining it and everything. I'm like, "Honey, it's her house. She can do what she wants to her house." And she's like, "Yeah, but it's so disrespectful." I'm like, "Honey, it's been like 50 years what is it now? Like 70 years since JFK has been in the house. Like, it's cool. Like, they can change the rose bushes. Like, why does that matter?" And mind you, maybe I'm like missing some historical context. Maybe there's some like meaning there. It's still her house. It's still not particularly important. I would classify that as fake news. If like we're discussing whether or not like the president's wife is like messing with somebody else's her own rose bushes, like that's the point where like we're clearly just wanting to shut up the Trumps, right? Like we're treating them like we would treat the Kardashians, like just as an object of derision,
I mean,
as celebrities rather than figures of like government.
It's not fake news if it's real. Like to me, fake news sounds like something that's like blatantly untrue. Like it's real, but it's just not like who cares? It's unimportant, but it's still real.
What I mean is that like I do feel that a lot of right wingers get attacked. I mean, it's clear that there's a liberal bias in the media, right? Like we're not going to pretend that this isn't true. Yeah. It's overblown to what degree it is, right? But at the same time, when you feel consistently like underrepresented by the media, like you're gonna start considering them your enemies, especially if there's like opportunistic people on your side saying like, "Oh, see, this is proof that they hate us." Like, yeah, it's kind of uncomfortable to always be, shat on, for laughs, kind of a thing. And I think that it does us like on any side. It really like it's not a good thing for us to just like sow discontent in such stupid ways. Like we don't need to be talking about the fucking rose bushes. We don't need to be for example, here's a better one, right? Like this is one that got my dad. Remember, my dad is a Cuban, so of course he's a Trump supporter. When COVID was going on, when it had just started, of course it's still going on, the reports that claim that like, "Oh, well, Trump's response wasn't like this country and Trump's response wasn't like that country." When they were like describing countries like who would they have been talking about at the time, like Sweden or something. It's like, yeah, they're like much smaller countries with like very different populations in a very different region of the world. Like we don't need to compare the US to that, right? Like there's better ways to compare the U.S. and Trump's response. That was at the time, mind you. I completely agree with everything that Vosh was saying about like how he described it now. But at the time, really, like you had no business comparing to like smaller governments, and we love to do that. Like the media just loves to pull just incredible comparisons where they can, especially when they think it's going to make them look good, or when it's going to give them something to talk about.
To be fair, I haven't seen what Vosh has said about coronavirus, but I have seen what a lot of people on the left have said about coronavirus. And to be honest, I don't blame Trump for what America's going through right now. I really don't.
Well, it's what he was saying in the Tim Pool stream, which is that Tim was insisting that, oh well, you can't criticize. Well, he wasn't even saying that you can't criticize Trump. That he was saying that he didn't want to criticize Trump or something to that effect, because we just don't know if preventing a panic, like Trump says, really was actually the better thing to do, right? And what Vosh was saying is like, no, it's not just that. It's the like a bunch of things, right? Like it's the fact that, for example, I think a really good metric on like just how bad the U.S. is doing is the fact that not by total population, right, but like per million, we have had more deaths than almost any other country. Mexico's actually doing worse now. So, and once again, Mexico is socialist. So, yeah, so we're doing worse. But we're still doing bad. Like even when you're counting it just by population, we're doing bad. When you're counting it by infections, we're doing really bad, right? And by all those metrics, Trump's response has been bad. Why wouldn't you just say that, like, hey,
well,
it seems like your response is bad.
What could Trump have done differently?
Well, not okay. So what I think that is the main thing, right? Is that this is a pandemic that spreads very easily. Like it's more communicable than the flu by a lot, right? And it's also the fact that people are really bad at thinking about how big numbers are at this scale, right? So I don't think they're sufficiently scared about a 2% mortality rate. And I think people really do need some sophistication with large numbers in order to understand that. And I think it's the role of anything who understands these numbers to communicate to the people, right? Because if you say like, oh yeah, no, it only kills about 2% of the population, and you're not telling them that means like millions and millions of people, possibly that they themselves know, that if they count 100 people on their Facebook feed, right, like that two of them, I mean, depending on age and all a bunch of other stuff, right, like two of them could be dead by year's end. Like that's a big deal, right? And Trump has been just constantly downplaying. And it doesn't affect us much on, well, it does affect us on the left, right? But it affects more the people on the right who are willing to listen to him and who are inclined to think that this is just all overblown. Because the reality of the pandemic is very uncomfortable, right? It has us like working mostly from home when we can. It has us interacting in very different and awkward ways with like masks on and everything. And so I understand the, what's it called when people are like not wanting to do something?
Reluctant?
Yeah. Okay. The reluctance of people to like, wear masks and change the way that they're living and like seeing their small businesses fail and everything because of a pandemic. I understand the response from people who don't understand how personal it can get, right? But
okay, well, just to jump in here, so that basically sounds like Trump should have used his office and his podium and his platform to impress upon people the seriousness of the virus. Okay, well, that's actually that is one potential criticism. What else could Trump have done differently?
Another thing that Trump could have done differently. Sorry, I had just lost my train of thought when you said that. When you asked.
Okay.
I mean, the downplaying is pretty bad. Keeping people hopeful that there's going to be a cure, right? And that all of these possibly dangerous possibly dangerous things that you can take or whatever, like when he was like supposedly sarcastically saying that like, oh well, Clorox or whatever, and then with the hydrochloroquine or whatever, he was also talking it up like it's going to be a cure. He keeps saying that like, oh, don't worry, like a vaccine is right around the corner, we're gonna have it next week, in the next few weeks or whatever, when everybody else is saying something to the contrary. Like, people are crazy to go back to their lives, like you can't have the president just, oh, okay, yeah, so uh, like making plans for like what they're going to do, like over their vacation, when it might be that the better thing to do and for everybody's safety is to just stay home, but if you think that there's a vaccine coming, it's like, oh, like I won't cancel those plans. But like the people who are saying stuff about the vaccines is like they're talking about mid-year 2021 or like maybe later, and then it's like getting it out to everybody. And yeah, we're getting better at treating it, but like how many people do we really want to expose to this, right? Like the thing is that like it's hard to internalize just how much of a problem this pandemic is, right? Like European countries were feeling all superior about it because the United States was like doing really horribly, right? So they decided to like relax a bit, and now they're dealing with it like full force. You know what I mean? Like it's really easy. Like we're all so eager for this to be over that it's really easy for us to relax. And when we relax, 2 weeks later we start getting like record highs in infections and in deaths. Like it's something that does need to be handled with care, and like Trump just doesn't care. Like he just cares about what people are going to be saying about him in the short term, which by the way is very dumb. Like he should really be caring about like what people are going to say like eventually. But that's like, I think Trump is dumb. He has no understand how bad things.
Oh, are you okay? You cut out there.
Oh, I just called Trump dumb, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a diehard Trump fan either. But like, whenever people talk about like, I do think there are things that Trump has done right. Like, I'm not a Trump hater, but I also don't like him. I'm neutral on Trump. But
what has he done right?
Oh, we can have that conversation after. I have a big long list for you if you want to see it. But in terms of the pandemic, like, firstly, people always say, well, Trump should have locked down harder, he should have diverted more funds or whatever it is, but I'm pretty sure that the 10th Amendment prevents him from doing that. Like the 10th Amendment means that it's the state governor's responsibility to do a lot of the dirty work of pandemic response. Which is why
that's one of the things. That's one of the things that Vosh was saying to Tim Pool, is like he brought up the same argument, and it was like, look, even us on the left, like he's crazy about like, or rather, he doesn't really put much thought into abusing as much power of the presidents as possible in like normal situations, right? Like he used the military to push people apart from in front of the White House just so he could do a photo op, so that he could look good, so that he's, hard on crime and big on the Bible, even though he has no idea what that book even says, right? Like,
I think that's actually false, because I said this in a video a couple months ago and I was corrected, and I looked it up and I was actually wrong. What was happening was, it was in Lafayette Square, which is across from the White House, and Trump did do a photo op there, so that's like obviously bullshit. Like, maybe you shouldn't be glorifying the fact that you had to use cops to clear out the square. However, they were about to burn down a church. The church was already on fire when they cleared them out. So like, it was a historic church that was part of Washington D.C. I forget the name of the church. It was the church that he did his photo op in front of. But like, the protesters were about to burn it down. Like, it was the fires were started, So like, it's not like the clearing of the square was illegitimate, but it was very tacky of what Trump did afterward, in my opinion.
Well, I'm a little skeptical of that. I'll have to look it up. But
I think I'd send you something on it. But yeah, go on.
But yeah, like assuming that you're right, though, what I'm saying is it still shows that he's willing to use the power of the presidency for a bunch of things, right? Like he's willing to allocate funds that don't really belong to him, to fund the wall and to press in that direction. And he's depending on what you believe, and I of course happen to be biased this way. or rather, I think it's pretty transparent that he, tried to abuse the power of the presidency, like to secure these funds that didn't belong to him, to try to push the president of Ukraine to do something, something for the U.S. or rather something for him, even like something like a personal thing. And so I see plenty of evidence, and I understand that like people could see otherwise, right? But I see plenty of evidence that he doesn't care about using force, right? So he can overstep his boundaries when it's politically convenient for him. So this was something that I think would have been widely popular, if he had just said, "Yeah, we're gonna force people to wear masks," just come on, you guys, you have to. I don't think that's the best thing. Like, I really do think that that's way too heavy-handed, and I think that the way that a lot of people on the left are pressuring people on the right to do things that they're already inherently uncomfortable with, like, you can talk to people. I know that a lot of people believe that we're beyond that, but like I really do think that you can just talk to people. When you yell at people and we call them stupid, and when you like make fun of them on TV and everything, that only makes them like double down.
Yeah, that's true. Here,
You know?
just to talk about something concrete here, I'll send you the link in DMs and I'll put it up on screen because I did find what I was talking about. So this, here we go. Let me just turn this on. Okay, yeah.
I see it.
Fire set at historic St. John's Church during protests of George Floyd's death. Now, this was the fire that was threatening to burn down the church. And it was happening that night. And then the next morning, they cleared out the square. And they said, no, you've had enough of that. You're not burning down historic monuments in Washington, D.C. You're done here.
June 1, and it's the Washington Post.
Yeah.
Okay.
So June 1st was the day that the square was cleared, and this happened the night of the 31st. So it was the next day they cleared it out.
All right.
Let me just take that down now. There we go. Okay.
Well, thanks for that. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Like there, I really do think like there are instances where the left is actually correct on a subject, but the right does not want to see the evidence, and vice versa. So I think it's important to go where the truth is, not go where your politics might take you.
Right. And I mean, what do you think is stopping us from being able to do that, though? Because each side is convinced that it's just like bad faith bullshit on each other's side, right?
Well, I think in some cases it is. Like, I actually genuinely believe that Vosh is a bad faith actor. Like there are
Vosh?
No, 100%. There are good leftist YouTubers. I like ContraPoints. I don't regularly agree with her, but I like ContraPoints. I do actually think Vosh, he's fucking in it for the money, and that's about it. Straight up.
I'm sure he enjoys the money, but
everyone enjoys the money.
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I could be proved otherwise, but
well, I mean,
why do you think so?
Well, this is an anecdote, so it's my own personal experience with him. So I don't expect anybody to believe this except for me. Okay.
Okay.
But for example, like I'm part of a charity that takes e-waste from around my city because my city has a lot of like, infrastructure that's based on computers. So we take like old computers that companies are throwing out because they're run by like old boomers that don't know what the fuck they're doing, right?
Right.
And we turn those into like working computers. Like, you take an office computer, you can, put some extra RAM in it, put a graphics card in it, and you might actually have like an okay computer for somebody who can't afford to buy a computer, right?
Radiohead reference?
Sorry?
Radiohead reference?
I don't know what Radiohead is. Sorry.
Oh, you said okay computer. So, anyway, that's really cool actually. That's really awesome.
I sent off a computer to a trans woman who needed one because she was poor, and then she was later a guest on Vosh's show actually, and she talked about how I had sent her this computer, and rather than asking about details or wondering why I would have done that, Vosh played it up like I was a weird simp. And the reason he did this is because I'm friends with Sargon, and he wanted to basically hurt that side of YouTube. And he had done some pretty disingenuous videos about me, calling me a fascist and whatever. So he just made it a joke. And I was like, well, that's not really that good, in my
Well, if
opinion.
that's what you do, I think that's like really cool, actually. That's
Well, thank you, but
uh,
I didn't appreciate how he framed it. Another time, like there was some drama going on with Shoe on Head, and I basically tweeted to my followers because my community was partially involved in it. I was like, hey, listen, can you not? Let's leave Shoe alone, all right? Like even if you disagree with her, let's not dogpile her anymore. I was trying to kind of stop some of it. And Vosh read that tweet out on his stream and made fun of me for trying. And I was like, what kind of a piece of shit is this? Like this Vosh, this is apparently your own friend who is currently in some shit. And just because I'm not a socialist, I don't agree with the left like all that much necessarily. I'm going to get shit on by your community because you brought it up on a stream. Like what the fuck is this? You know?
well, if it's as you describe, then I think that's pretty unfair of him. But what I'll say about Vosh is that, yeah, it is too. He clearly does have an ego, and I think it has to be an aspect of ego in order to like do a stream thing. Like you probably kind of feel it a little.
No.
You don't feel ego doing this at all?
No. There
All
is
right.
nothing different between me and my viewers.
No, no, no. I don't mean that, but like you do mean certain like pride, right? And it like, well, see, is that you might not even be like him. I do know that like fame and viewers like does make some people like it kind of goes to their head. And here's the thing, like Vosh for sure. I mean, I don't know much about Destiny, but the little bits about Destiny that I've seen, right? I've seen his interactions with Dick Masterson, with Digibro, and I guess now with Vosh. And these kids are just like clearly 4chaners. Like they are so edgy for edgy's sake, And I think if you're trying to do something like pretty authentic, um, guys like Vosh and like Destiny and whatever, like they'll shit on you just to dunk on you, especially if they've disagreed with you. Um, so don't I don't think they were being. I mean, he was being sincere. I think that if he knew how you felt, assuming that you're sincere, and I do think you are, I don't think he would have been as shit to you as he was.
I
I
think that
mean,
I think that well,
I could be
Vosh
wrong.
had. I can see my subscriber list, and Vosh had been subscribed to me for about a year before he talked about me. And I don't know if he actually watched me or not. I guess it doesn't really matter. But he had made a video about me. The first time he'd ever publicly talked about me was basically to call me a fascist and a reactionary and all of this kind of nonsense because I had done a video where I said that conservatism was becoming the new counterculture for younger people. And I still believe that. I'm not a
Do
conservative, and I'm definitely not counterculture. I'm very normal and boring. But I do think that like you have Zoomers and probably like even Gen Alphas, like when they get a little bit older, they're gonna be like they're gonna be socially very liberal. They don't care about abortion rights or gay rights or anything like that. Those are settled issues to them. But when it comes to
right.
economics, they're probably going to be somewhat right leaning. And I think it's definitely because of like the everyone wants to be a YouTuber and everyone wants to be a streamer, and those are pretty closely tied to hustle culture. The idea that working hard and working consistently allows you to get ahead. That's very
That
much a
definitely
libertarian
contributed to
idea.
that. Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. No, yeah, I definitely see that. No, and I think that Vash has pretty much corroborated that, right? And just like illuminating the fact that there's so many TikTokers that are conservative, right? Who don't seem to have a lot of. I mean, they're still young, so they don't have a lot of good talking points or like solid ideas, but they seem to be coalescing around those ideas more because um, it seems cool to them, right?
Well, it's not just cool; it's also that like generally hard work gets results. So
Well, I mean, you're saying like it was the what like you didn't just say that it was like punk rock. I know that's Joseph Watson or whatever, but what did you say that it was to them? Counterculture.
yes, counterculture. I did start the conversation with the punk rock conversation because that is kind of an easy way to start it, but it was a more general statement. But yeah, when I made that video, he did a video on me, basically calling me a fascist and a reactionary, and I was like, well, I don't even consider myself conservative. I'm just talking about what I'm seeing, you know, like it was a completely
So
unfair take, in my opinion.
that's actually well, that's interesting to me, right? Because you say that you're liberal, and you seem to be using it in the same context as Tim Pool is. And like I said, I'm not super familiar with him,
Mhm.
but do you feel that's like really a word that like adequately describes you, liberal?
Yes.
Like that's what you said. That's what you would say that you are.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Like honestly, I always assumed that that was a word used in bad faith, and I
Lots of people
think
do. Lots of
honestly,
people do.
I
But
mean, mainly because up until a couple of years, right? Like I thought I was liberal, before I realized that like maybe I'm a little bit more left leaning than that. To what degree, I honestly still don't know. Like I'm still trying to figure it out. And it's not like, see, my problem is that it's not like I can't see. I'm from working class background, so it's not like I can't see a lot of the points made by the who I consider the authentic actors um, on the on well to every right to every side the right of me, right?
Mhm.
So like liberals and conservatives and like even far right people, there's some of their arguments that I understand like where they're coming from, like in realistic terms. And yeah, to me it's just, I think from everything that I've engaged with, a lot of people are either like doomers, defeatists, um, um, supposed pragmatists who really are just like disaffected or disillusioned. And I definitely think that's a problem. Um, and that to me is the solution that leftists seem to want to uh, put forward. The only problem is that when you get to the community on the left, what you find is that there's just like infighting. Nobody really has solutions, right? And that's the thing that like I especially don't like coming from Mexico, right? Like we have in Mexico like a very strong political party. We have three parties in Mexico rather than just the two, right? So you have like your Democratic Liberal Party, you have your um, your conservative party, and then you have your Labor Party, your Party of the People or whatever, your Socialist Party. And the thing with the Socialist Party is that in Mexico City, for the 25 years that like I've been aware of this, has been a gridlock, just a gridlock, because the socialists will walk for everything every day, close down all of the streets, demand action by the government, who is often themselves, and they do nothing. They make all these promises, and that's something that I'm really afraid of, because I really do think that somebody, for example, like AOC, is like, uh, it, like really wants change and is really, willing to do the hard work and everything. Whether you agree or disagree with that, the point is that I think she could open the door for the same thing that we have in Mexico, which is left-wing demagoguery. And I really don't want that, right? Because at least the things that like Thought Slime say and like Vosh says about like what our society could be without capitalism. Peter Coffin has some good ideas here. No, he's like even farther left. What to me sound like good ideas anyway. Um, I do fear that the left can get easily co-opted by demagogues just in the same way that the right can. And I think that ultimately, if we're talking working class, dude, we're talking working class. We're talking about normies. We're talking about like people's parents. We're talking about, racist uncles and like crazy vegan aunts, and that's who comprise like the majority of the people, right? And I don't think we're so dissimilar. Like, I think we would agree maybe on a lot of things. And the thing is that we don't have enough faith in the government, or in our systems in general, to have real conversations. Like if one side feels attacked by the media, if the other side feels attacked by their president, if both sides feel that they can't trust their politicians to actually, hold good to their word, right? Like we don't feel that it's our government. We don't feel that this is our system. We all just feel mad and angry and are like just itching to blame somebody else for it. You know what I mean?
No, I do get it, but I do think like the world without capitalism would be an infinitely worse world than the world that we have now, and I would not want to see that come about. Like, and this is the thing. Like, I'm not a pure capitalist simp. There are definitely obvious problems with capitalism, um, but I think it gets so much worse when you take it away. Because
Um,
if capitalism really is just people own their labor and people trade their labor, and you can't do that, well,
well, so here's
you've
the thing, right? Like,
destroyed civilization at that point.
yeah, I mean, I don't think that because I subscribe to this whole thing that like if you have an extractive institution, you have a failing nation. I definitely do think if people can't have personal property, um, maybe even a degree of private property. I'm not sure how much I subscribe to that, honestly. But if people don't have a degree of something that they can call their own, that's an extractive institution, like for sure. But there is a difference because a lot of people conflate private property with personal property, and personal property are the things that you yourself own, right? That's not something that socialists want to get rid of. What we want to get rid of is private property.
Well,
And
just so we're not dancing around definitions, you know that the current legal definition of personal property and private property is the same thing, right?
okay, well, I mean, then that's something. No, but but the
You're
difference.
talking about like the Marxist conception of private property, not the common law one, right?
Well, let's say the Voshian, because that's the guy who I listen
The
to, right? Like,
Voshian.
yeah, or the Thought Slimian. Um, basically, yeah, if somebody was gonna come over and like take the fruit of my labor, um, regardless of what side they're on, that's authoritarian. That's an extractive institution. Like, I'm gonna fight that, right? Um, and I think that people might disagree to what extent. You know, like how far private property should extend, right? So should I be able to own my house, so that I can make it look better? Should I be able to, I don't know, own my work truck or whatever, or like is this something that is just collectively owned? I happen to think I'm off two minds, right? Because like I idealistically, I think that we do better when we share. Um, the problem is, I know that we're also really bad at sharing. Like, there's going to be people that like just damage property that's collectively owned. There's people who are going to be bad actors and like try to destroy it. There's some people who just don't give a lot of thought into it and would let it go to waste. There's some people who like we're really good at disagreeing about shit, right? Like that's the reason why like every partnership that I've seen as a business has failed because they eventually can't see eye to eye. That's what a lot of marriages fail too, right? Like you no longer see eye to eye onto like like a clear goal of
Mm-hmm.
what you want to do together.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole thing dissolves. um yeah, I don't know, like for me it's tough, like because I want to see us own things together more. But I also do think that so there's this other book, right, that talks about the things that make people feel uh, like ownership over something, right? Who make that the motivations that make people uh, want to do things or like make things better, like innovate. And there are things that we're doing right now badly in the corporate world, right? Which is like giving people autonomy, right, to like make their own decisions within like the specific area of whatever it is that they're doing, right? Like if you don't trust your developers to, like, for example, build you a secure infrastructure, and like you want to just post a lot of what you think should be done, that's bad, right? Like trust your experts to be your experts, kind of a thing, right? Like we're lacking autonomy in our jobs, authority to like act on those things, right? and I forgot what the other one is. But point is that there's certain things that we find that we need within a structure for us to feel like, we're not being extracted upon. And like I think it's a tricky thing to figure out exactly what that is or where the limits lie. I just don't think that our current incarnation of capitalism is that remotely. Like I think it creates a lot of perverse incentives to exploit workers, um, and treat people unfairly.
No, I actually I know what you're saying, and I do agree somewhat. It's just that I think the goals that you're talking about would probably be better. They'd be better reached through a different type of capitalism and not through socialism. I don't think that socialism will ever get to the goals that you're describing.
I mean, ultimately, I could be wrong, right? Like this is just like an area of opinion, especially for something as theoretical as socialism, something that like we've only ever seen fail. Yeah, like I, that's something that I'll take issue also with the left. The fact that you know we say like, oh, just give me a chance to demonstrate. Well, I mean, we don't say exactly this, but I'm saying what we're
Some of them
asking for
do.
is a
Some of them
chance to.
do.
All right, fair enough. A chance to demonstrate that socialism can work. Despite like ample evidence to the contrary, right? And then we don't go and start any of these ventures ourselves. And there's a lot that can be said about like, oh, well, it's unfairness this and unfairness that and everything. But I'm telling you, for example, like if I'm starting a company, right, I'm seeking to establish it in some way before just like outright starting a co-op because I don't trust other people's input that implicitly. I would have to be working with people who I trusted a lot in order to start a business with them, right? Like even if the ultimate goal is to support my employees, right, and let them own the means of production, I don't think that they necessarily, unless they're really talented, or particularly driven or motivated, or they even understand what I'm doing, I don't think that they could keep a business afloat just because, like, oh yay, let's seize the means of production. For example, the Bacardi in Cuba, right? Like you have the Bacardi family leaving Cuba, right, and they leave the factories over there, right? Yeah. What do you expect to happen? That like the workers are just going to be like, yeah, all right, we work for ourselves now, and like just work with the same incentives, keep the products just as good, right? That they're even going to have the knowledge required to keep that enterprise going, right? Um, Now there is definitely an aspect that people do become experts in their field. So eventually it does become extractive to just be working under a boss when, like, for example, you're a developer and you're the one who knows how the entire business infrastructure works, and they're still paying you peanuts because, oh, they hired you on as an intern way back when. You know what I mean? Like you should pay proportionately to what you are worth to the company, and there's no incentive to pay you what you're worth to the company other than like constant badgering and bartering. Like really the thing that's said in the development community, right, is like you never want to get a raise in your company. You need to quit and go to a different company, because that way you can negotiate from the get-go. Because if a company's already like met you under the context of like, hey, we used to pay you $15 an hour, they're not going to want to pay you 50. They're going to want to pay you maybe 25 if they're really afraid that you're going to leave, whereas another company might just like snatch you up. So that's the kind of purpose incentive that I'm talking about.
I don't even know if I'd qualify that as perverse, but just to go back a little bit, since there was a lot there. It seems like you understand, like you understand very clearly the criticisms of socialism, why they're valid. Just out of curiosity, like you've been saying most of this time, you've been saying stuff like, you know I like this idea, but I don't think it'll work, and you've said that a handful of times. Is there any idea on the left that you actually think will work in reality?
Well, the problem with the left, I think we might agree, is they're really bad at coming up with solutions. They're really good at problems, but yeah, like the actual solutions part is the part that, like, honestly, like I'm having trouble parsing, because like I keep wanting to say like, hey, let's do this, but I don't want to see advocacy. I don't want to see like, oh, let's just protest. Like protests are effective for like a different kind of thing. But when you're trying to change the minds of everybody, like, capitalism is working for tons of people, or at least they think that it's working for them, right? So how do you convince them that, like, dude, we could establish something so much better if, right? And mm, there's not, like, I'm left grasping for straws, right? Like, um, the thing is, the thing is that I'm pretty confused, honestly, because I want to see a system where workers are compensated fairly. I want to see a system that doesn't create like bad incentives for people to just like abuse employees, like get rid of safety laws, deregulate, in favor of like big corporations and everything.
Just to talk about something specific, like if we're going to home in on one thing, why do you think workers aren't compensated fairly?
Mm, man, because they're so not. Um, they're just not. I mean, you can hear it in the way that people talk about like hiring, for example. Um, it turns out that the most important thing about how good you are at doing your job, that what people call competence. Yeah, competence is like acquired, right? Developers, like for example, with a computer science degree, like they don't actually know how to program for like business level software. They don't. They know a bunch of theory. They know, a bit of a programming language. They don't really understand architecture. They don't really understand business, right? And so you hire these expensive engineers, and it turns out that they don't know what they're doing, right? So you're supposedly hiring them for their competence because, hey, they have a degree. It turns out that somebody who's been a web developer for like a really long time and has had a bunch of clients. No, somebody who's been a web designer, sorry, might know more about what you're trying to do with, with a business piece of software than somebody who's like fresh out of school. So competency is something that, well, the way that humans are, right, is you get good at understanding a complex system by engaging with it. And you might think that university is like a good way to get people ready for like the complex system of like operating within a business structure. It isn't. Usually you need to work inside of a business in order to understand why they make decisions the way they do and all this stuff. So basically, the reason why people are not being compensated fairly is because we pretend that we're good at identifying the things that make somebody good at their job. And I don't want to lose my train of thought. We crap.
Well, to go back a bit to the principle though, like, why do you think that people aren't paid fairly or compensated fairly, as you like to say, for their jobs though?
Right. That's what you're talking about.
Mhm.
So people aren't compensated fairly. Um, let me let me tell you like the little anecdote, I guess, that I can describe this without thinking too much about it,
Sure,
because
sure, sure. Yeah, no problem.
waxing poetic gets a little confusing for me. Yeah, so I worked in a print shop where I was an entire side of production. Right, it was a 3-person operation, and I wound up taking over establishing half the business. like because I had some previous experience that was adjacent to what they were doing, and they were like, "Hey, um, uh, here you go, like get this started. We'll get this underway and everything." And so half of the business was me,
Mm-hmm.
except it was incredibly hard for me um, to ask for more than I was making. Like it was always just like pushing and pushing and negotiating and negotiating, and it's really really hard to keep pushing, right? And really the breaking point for me is there was a really expensive order that came in for something like, I don't remember, just like a ridiculous number of pieces, like way more than we do a day. Let's say, for example, we did 10 pieces a day. Well, an order came in for like 50, right? And it was a lot of money, and it was a lot of materials, and it was a lot of stuff to do outside of everything we usually do, right? And I wound up getting it done, and I wound up actually like having to stay like tons of extra hours in order to get this done, right? And I charged in such a way, mind you, that first of all, I was the one setting the pricing structures too, right? And I charged enough that I knew that for each of these products, we were basically getting about 50, like $50 in labor on top of our already considerable margin that we put on products, because that's the way that manufacturing works, right? And I really thought, that this much money was going to mean that I was going to get a portion of that. Like I was the one who put the labor costs, but I wasn't paid a cent over what I normally get paid, right? And I was just flabbergasted because like, hey, I'm basically the one who took this entire order, right? I'm the only one who could have done this entire job. Um, I'm the one who wrote how much we should be getting for labor on top of the margin, and yet I was paid none of that, right?
Well, if you were so valuable to the company, why didn't you negotiate yourself to a higher paying position?
Well, that's the thing, like I kept pushing and pushing and pushing, but ultimately what that means is um, you're going to be taking a larger portion of that company, right? Like you're going to be taking a larger piece of the pie, and I don't think that people want to have a business, like people when they go into a capitalist type of business, right? Like it is, hey, I'm here to make money, right? It's not, hey, I'm here to like get paid a fair wage, right? And so when somebody like starts showing that they deserve to be paid enough, but like paying them more means that you are going to have to change the way that you think about your business, because it's no longer the thing that like you're going to like retire from, but it's going to be the thing that sustains you. That's kind of shitty, right? Like under capitalism, it's just like, oh crap, well, I made this in order to get it. So what are you going to do? You have to undervalue that employee, right? Like you have to like not pay them what they're worth.
I don't think so.
Like,
I don't agree with that.
so you think you can pay them what they're worth,
Yeah,
even
I
though,
think what happens is like in any job. I know that the Marxist conception is called surplus value, right? So the idea is that the product that the worker creates is sold for more than what the worker is paid, and the difference is the surplus value, and that goes to the capitalist at the top. Well, in almost every case, that surplus value actually just goes to other people in the business who are also providing meaningful labor. Like there's no surplus value. It's all been accounted for.
well, I mean, this is a pretty good example then. I mean, I'm telling you, like I set the price for labor.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was supposed to be getting $50 out of each one of those pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the one who set the price. And that was once again on top of our margin, which is like what the business operates on.
Right.
Mind you, it was also my time and all that stuff. And yet
Mm-hmm.
the incentive was still there. And this person, I mean, we were a 3-person operation. This person was my friend, right? Like they weren't just my boss, they were my friend. And if a person that I trust, right, is unwilling to give me my fair share under the structure, I just think that there's
Well,
once again, it's that incentive. It's like that's not what he signed up for. He didn't sign up to like, pay me what I'm worth. He signed up to pay me adequately so that he could make money.
well. Firstly, I mean, you did negotiate for the salary you agreed to, right? Like the $50. That was the negotiation, wasn't it?
No, no, no. This was the price per order. Like
Right. Okay. Yes.
like I was paid something per hour, and this was like literally like me setting the price that we charge for labor.
Okay. So yeah, like you still negotiated your per hour, but at the same time, I mean, the building that you worked in, presumably your boss bought that or rents that. You know,
Mhm.
the tools that you use, you didn't buy those, presumably. Any materials that had to be used in your job, you didn't buy those. That was bought by the business. So it
Mhm.
seems like a lot of what you're saying is surplus value is taken up by business expense.
Nope, I set the prices. So the way that I did it is literally I calculated how much we needed to make in a day, based like all of the business expenses, right?
Hmm.
You you write them down, right? And then you're like, okay, well, let me divide them by the number of days. So this is how much we need to make in a day in order to like cut even, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then on top of that, I'm like, okay, well, on top of that, we need to make a margin, right? And for our business, it was pretty good. I feel bad saying exactly what it was, but it was like way more than like in in like a normal business, like right, like in a normal business, like if you're looking for like distribution or things like that, you're looking for like a sometimes for like really slim margins, 10 to like at most 30%. And we were doing quite above that. So it was accounted for. On top of that, once again, it was my time. It was time that like the business wasn't even supposed to be operational. And like a few hours more light did not add sufficiently in expense to warrant not giving me literally what I charged for labor, kind of a thing.
Okay. So I mean, there's definitely like in terms of labor, in my opinion, that's always the responsibility of the boss and the employee to negotiate. And if they can't come to an agreement that they both like, well, then the employee should walk, and that's what should happen. But like when you go through the books and you see that all of the labor's been accounted for, all of the materials have been accounted for, all the business expenses, all that stuff, it's all been accounted for, and everyone's been paid, and then there's excess money that's still left over. That's not surplus value. That is literally what the owner of the business should be making because they founded the business. They're taking on the financial risk of the business.
Right, that's the margin.
Right, but that's completely legitimate.
Yeah, the margin is legitimate, but the $50 that I charge for labor per order, that belonged to me, right? I charged that for labor. And what I'm saying is that was taken. Basically, if the market worked the right way, right? Remember, I don't think the market is like necessarily like this like evil construct or anything. I think we would have a market regardless, right? But if the market worked correctly, right, like fairly, you wouldn't see wage theft. Like, I don't think that it's just unscrupulous people. I think that there's something about owning a business that makes you think that, or rather, I don't know. Like, I know a lot of this is like very anecdotally and everything.
Hmm.
I still like, I maintain that it's valid just because this is the kind of thing that would make someone disaffected enough with capitalism to turn them into a leftist, right? Like, because this is what happened to me. So, like,
Well, it doesn't mean that the problem is not with capitalism, but just that you potentially had a shitty boss.
right. Like it's easy to dismiss it as that. The problem is that, like, for example, when I hear people like Thought Slime, right? You hear a lot of the same problems that they had, right? Like previous to working at this job and then like various like other jobs and everything, I had the same kind of retail jobs that Thought Slime talks about. I mean, anybody who's like worked a retail job knows exactly how shitty it is. And a lot of the times, I think we wonder, why the hell is it so exploitative? Why is it so shitty to work for retail? Why isn't it like better, right? And I know that it's better in it might be better in other countries, let's say European countries. I honestly don't know, right? And you might say like, oh, see, like capitalism can work, such as over there. What I know, well, like from my experience, right, like as I've progressed through my career, is that ultimately, like the best thing is to work for yourself, right? And I mean, this is something that like most libertarians would agree with, right? Like if you are an entrepreneur, if you are the owner of your own business, you can expect to be setting the prices, so you're going to be getting all that excess value for yourself, right?
Yeah.
That's supposed to be the whole point of a co-op, right? Like you get together and you're like, hey, we're gonna agree that however we work, we're gonna split everything evenly. Now it turns out that co-ops don't often work because, I mean, how much does the the designer get paid compared to uh, the person who makes the coffee? Would it be fair to split it evenly? Like there's contention there. Like even for example, maybe the business person thinks work is a lot more valuable than the developer, kind of a thing, right? So it's hard to agree on what works, and it turns out that the co-ops that actually do work are, for example, like farmers co-ops, where like everybody has a homogeneous product, right? It's easier to like say like, oh well, clearly you deserve this and clearly you deserve that. So what do you do to not just arrive at a state where like everybody's just an independent contractor, and you're always pretty much just like everybody's setting up their own prices and everything, but also everybody's everybody's having to incur the burden of uh, lack of safety that comes from just being an entrepreneur, right? Like there's some people who kind of would like it, to just be introduced to like a co-op where they can just fit right in like you would
Well,
in a company, right?
the thing is,
And just you
I
get paid fairly.
I don't think you get a safe option. I think you either have to, or rather, a perfect option. There is no perfect option. Like you either have to be an entrepreneur and therefore take on the risk of the business yourself, or you have to work for somebody else's business and they've taken on the risk, and in exchange for you not having to take on any financial risk, you have to basically become a part of their machine. I mean, those are two legitimate choices, and I wouldn't judge somebody for choosing one over the other. But you don't get to have the best of both. Things
Right,
don't work that way.
right. And that's the problem to me, is just simply that seems to be like the ideal, right? Because I subscribe to this, right? I was just like, hey, I'll just work for myself because I don't want to, like ultimately I'm too much of a control freak to have a boss in the first place, right? That's why I'm an entrepreneur.
Hmm.
But I but I know that a lot of people still have, like I see a lot of developers, for example, wasting their talent, their engineering know-how, right? Working for people like what the fuck do you need to be making like better ads for a company that sucks at selling ads? Like that's a waste of an engineer, right? To me. And like, wait, what was I going with that? I don't know. I think I just wanted to rant about that. Either way, like I see that the ideal would be that um, hey, you have the choice, whatever you want, right? And if you don't, you can just start your business, right? And like you're saying, that is legitimate. But I don't see. I fail to see the reason why, if you're a worker for somebody, you can expect to be like so badly exploited,
Well, I
right?
mean, I definitely
Like
think there should be like a minimum standard. I mean, I do agree with the minimum wage. I do agree with worker safety laws. Like, I don't think it should be just like 1800s Victorian era capitalism where you have like kids in factories and shit like that. I don't agree with that.
But
But
where do
I
you think the incentive to like then like, because we know that like, man, working retail sucks everywhere, right? We know that,
yes,
right? Working
yes,
for a
it
big
does.
company works everywhere. Why though? Right? Like it just what about the system that we're in
It's not the system.
creates those incentives to like be so shitty towards workers,
Well, no, I
right?
don't think
Like
it's the system. Like I've worked in retail jobs where the people there have been just fine, but it's the fact that the work is repetitive. It's the fact that the work is often physical and uncomfortable. Um,
nah, but
sometimes
that's not what I'm
it is
talking
just the
about though.
job. Sometimes that's just the nature of the job is that it's not a good job.
No, what I'm talking about is like, for example, what could push a company to like, for example, institute like rules where like you never know if you open or close, right? Especially in like simultaneous days, you have to fill in a form in order to ask for days off, and then you might not even be granted it, right? Or what could drive a company to set up, for example, to not have a safety net for like employees who get pregnant. Maybe that's asking too much. I don't know. Like it seems to be in the US anyway. Just why is it so shitty? And the thing is that you could say a lot of things, right? Like, oh, shitty bosses, shitty this and everything. What I get from Bosch basically, and from Thoughtslime is, dude, it's capitalism, homie. Like that's what sets the incentives.
I don't think so.
Like
I don't think it's capitalism. I think it is the nature of those workplaces. Those jobs would always at least somewhat be like that, no matter what economic system you run them under. And I think there's a few reasons. Like if you're operating a business that has to stay open nearly 18 hours a day, well, then you have to have basically people there all the time. And it's generally a good idea to have those people trained in multiple different types of jobs, whether it's opening or closing or the daytime rush or whatever it is, so that if someone quits or someone gets sick or someone injures themselves, you actually have somebody who can be there for closings, even though you usually use them for openings. Like, and when it comes to long-term leave, I honestly just don't think that's the company's responsibility. Like, if you get a job and they say, okay, you can expect to work here 3 shifts a week, and you say, well, you know what, I only want 3 shifts a week, so our ideas of what work should be for me match up. I want 3 shifts because I'm doing something else. You only need 3 shifts, so fine. And then we negotiate on what days I'm available, or whatever it is. Like, it makes sense that you would have to ask for certain days off, because they've invested in you too. Like they've trained you and they want you there. They don't want you to be like, oh, I'll work once every 2 weeks. That's kind of unreasonable. They have stuff to do, you know. And then when it comes to paid long term leave, like frankly, it's not the company's business if you get pregnant or if you want to have kids. Like that's your life choice. If you want to do it, go ahead. But like, why should anybody else foot the bill? Like, it's not like the company wants you to have kids, you know.
yeah, so that's it's a little bit hard to it, it's a little bit hard for me to understand that point of view, honestly, just because I don't see what the point of really anything is if it's not for the betterment of people. And like I think that anybody who wonders what the hell leftists are even thinking, right? Like with their nuttiness, like that has to go through your head, like what exactly is the motivation and everything. And like coming it from like a Buddhist perspective, because that's what I am. Like I just like to me you saying that like, oh well, why should you expect a business to like pay for things like people getting pregnant and everything? I'm like, because they're your, like, to me, like legitimately, like it's just as stupid as this, because that's where I spend my whole, like my entire time. That's where my friends are. That's where, like, that's who I work for. That's like it shouldn't be anything beyond just, I mean, I guess, is that ideal? Does that sound idealistic to you? It's just like, hey, like you're the people that are like I'm going to see mostly every day, if for as long as I stay here. Like this period of my life is going to be informed by like this place, right? And there's that inherent feeling in I think in humans to just be like, okay, well, I want to feel like secure. I want to feel accepted by the people that I'm spending time with. I don't want it to be this like cold business transaction where like, oh, I got pregnant, now I have to be let go or whatever. Maybe that's legitimate, It
Let
just,
me
to me, that's
let me clarify something then, real quick. Like, I don't think that businesses shouldn't do that. I think that that's like part of a hiring package. Like, if you want to attract high quality workers, then maybe you do give them paternity leave or maternity leave. Maybe you do give them lots of paid sick days or lots of vacations. I think that's
yeah, yeah.
all stuff that can be negotiated. I don't think it's inherently good or bad.
Okay, Cool. No. Yeah, that's all I'm saying, right? Like, so, right. So where do we go from that, right? Because if we establish that that's something that's desirable, and then you expect companies to just, you know, like, it sounds good, right? Like, I definitely pay for a company that like is willing to pay for me for some time off, when I have a baby.
Well, sure, but
And
like
yet
I
we
I,
and
I
yet
don't
we've continued to and yet we've continued to like what you call it, like, make, like, that's not the landscape that we live in, basically, right? Like, companies don't offer those things, they offer those things less, and we seem to, and it seems to just stem, like, why is greed the thing that like motivates all this, right? Like, why are people so sensitive towards the people that are like literally working under these conditions? Like,
Well, I don't think it's greed. I think there's actually a number of things here. Like, firstly, like an hour or whatever ago, when I mentioned that regulations cause large businesses to form monopolies and small businesses to go out of business, I think that also applies here. For example, I do know that now that Sargon has started his business and he's hired 4 people, he's told me a little bit about the process of writing up contracts for those people. And like he has to pay the government or like either like a pension plan or taxes or whatever it is, like these various institutions in the government, he has to pay them nearly half of what he has to actually pay his employees in wages. So
yeah,
like he could hire 2 more people if that weren't the case. That'd be 2 more jobs. That'd be 2 more people who are working for him and not working at the grocery store. So you
yeah,
can tack on a government um a government mandated healthcare program or a government mandated paternity leave situation, or you can raise the minimum wage, or you can do all of this sort of stuff. But every time you do that, you're going to have businesses that get squeezed, especially if they're small businesses, and now they can't afford to hire as many people. So it's really a trade off. Like, do you want more people working at better quality jobs, or do you want those jobs to be providing more benefits, and therefore you have less people working at them and more people working at shittier jobs? There is that trade off definitely exists, but also it's like I don't think that like if as part of negotiation or part of putting together an attractive hiring package to make sure that high quality people apply to your workplace, you can offer things like maternity leave. But in general, no, I don't think that it's like the obligation, it's the responsibility of the company to pay for the stuff that you do outside of work, because generally like you are engaging in a business transaction, you are selling your labor for money, and that is the bare essential of the contract. And you like there's no reason why you should do that. Like, if you want to, go ahead. If you don't want to, work somewhere else or start another business, or start your own business rather. But like I don't think that a corporation has the responsibility to care for you as if you were a child and they were your parent just because you work at them. I don't think corporations have that. I don't think government has that. I think
no,
at some
well, I
level
mean,
you are your own person. You're an adult, and you should
I
have to
mean,
stand on
they
your own.
very clearly don't. They very clearly don't have the obligation to take care of you, right? Like, I
Mhm.
mean, that's patently clear.
No, they shouldn't. They
But,
should not.
yeah, I don't know. To me, it seems like if I hire on people, like, I definitely want to be taking care of them, because you say um, that you can just go and start, like, that's the thing that like a lot of people say, right? It's dismissive because a lot of us can, oh, just go and start your own business. But what about the people who can't? Like, in some way or form, like in some shape or form, like, we need to take care of the people who can't get a better job, right? And or the people who um yeah, just like vulnerable people who can't get a better job, who, yes, they find it difficult to work at certain types of jobs, right? Who might have a disability and everything, right? And like, I don't think that this callousness is inherent in human transactions. It's just what we've set up through capitalism. Like,
Well, this is the
it,
thing. I don't necessarily view it as callousness. I view it as self determination. Like, if I would not want to be dependent on my workplace for the things that I do outside of my workplace. I think that's a slippery slope to go down.
All right. The way that like Thoughtslime would frame this is that okay. So, man, sorry, I haven't eaten, so like my mind is a little bit foozy.
Oh, don't worry, dude. I've only had coffee today. Coffee
we're in
and
the same
nothing
boat.
else.
Yeah, I'm trying not to waste your time too much, but like I'm finding it a little bit hard to keep my concentration steady.
No, I understand.
But no, like, where was I gonna go with that? I know Thoughtslime said some like. Sorry if I'm borrowing, by the way, like my entire ideology from like a few like people that I see on YouTube. Like I'll tell you, like most of like my disaffection with like the concept that I've come to understand as capitalism is just the fact that I see so much callousness, people not being adequately taken care of, right? And like some of us are like skilled enough to be able to find other jobs, but the fact that the entire system seems to be like made up of people who, right? Like you even say it, like if everybody was a doctor, right? Like who would make the burgers, kind of a thing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And just the fact that there needs to be this like working class that we extract stuff from seems wrong. Like, mind you, let's put it into historical context just like really quick. When we were doing subsistence farming, I mean, that's it, right? You either work or you die, right? The thing is that as civilization progresses, like this is just my idea, like, is that as society progresses, we should be looking for incrementally better things, like incrementally better ways to provide for the people within a society. Like that's just what I feel should be happening, right? Like, so for me, it seems that if we currently have these incentives to keep a certain working class, right, of people who are just making the burgers for everybody else, right? If we're setting things up so that the people in power can retain power, if we're setting it up so that our, democracy isn't working as well as it should on all of this, right? And I don't. It's not all capitalism either. We should be looking at the things that don't work and just try to implement the things that might make it better. So, like for example, I'm not going to pin it on like capitalists to like destroy capitalism. I hear a lot of people on the left, always talking about this like revolution thing. That doesn't sound lefty to me. It sounds communist to me, right? They're always talking about, like Castro would always talk about the revolution, right? I don't know what this obsession with the revolution is.
Well, to be fair, like communism is on the left in terms of the political spectrum.
Yeah. But I mean, like, like here in the US, we're like milquetoast lefties, right? Like very few of us are actual communists. So that's the kind of thing that I mean, like that contrast of like, yeah, we're going to take the government down versus like, maybe there needs to be some change or whatever, towards like
the thing is like you're describing everything getting better all the time, and that's literally capitalism. Like that has been the driving force of that situation, because you have people who innovate and then they take that innovation to market, and then people want it and so they buy it. And like,
no, I mean, I get what you're saying. Like we've seen a lot of innovation, and we've seen a lot of, I mean, our lives obviously have gotten better, right?
This is the best time to be alive in human history right now.
Well, for almost everybody in almost every way, yes. But this is not the ideal way of. Yeah, I agree with you, and like honestly, it's been pretty good to me too, right? Like, but I'm saying this is not the ideal way, right? Like, I find myself, like for example, making a lot of choices based on the fact that like, oh yeah, but if I don't do something to make money right now, I may not have a house over my head. Like, I may not be able to support my kids or whatever. And that is just something that we should be working towards doing away with. Like the need to pay for all of these things that we could have set up by now, that like, at least in this, like, that's the richest country in the world, most people are provided for. Instead, we've let like certain extractive institutions like come up to keep us down. Like, for example, housing, right? Like, why should most people rent? Most people should own, right? But
Well,
there's
most
been
people
those
can't afford to
incentives.
own.
Well, why is that, right? Like the reason is because people, or rather, corporations keep buying up land so that they can build places to rent, right? So if you want to live in a house where like the good jobs are, you have to rent. You can't just buy because the prices are going to be stratospheric because like the prices are on purpose built that way. And you might say, well, oh, well, they're the ones who built the building, right? Yeah, but a lot of that, is literally they're just making money after a while. Like like in New York, for example, like the buildings are like dilapidated and horrible, and like they're not being updated, and they're literally just sitting on piles and piles of money, like the landlord class,
Oh no,
right?
I agree with
And
that. Like, there's definitely instances where corporations are doing the whole rent rather than own thing. There's definitely instances where corporations can buy up too much. And there are definitely instances where landlords they don't do the proper job of being a landlord, which is what you pay them for. It's not just to live in a house; it's so that the landlord takes care of the legal hassle of owning the property. The landlord takes care of repairing the property and doing that sort of thing. Like, there is an obligation on the landlord side as well that some landlords don't fulfill. I'm lucky because I have a landlord that does. Whenever there's something wrong with my place, the landlord will come and fix it, and I don't have to wait. So, like, there are definitely instances where renting is legitimate, where you have a landlord who is honest and who actually does the work of a landlord. Why wouldn't you want to rent from him? And the answer is I do. But like, the house that I rent, I couldn't afford, and it's not because the landlord bought it. Like, my landlord is a working class guy who bought a second house to rent it out because he wanted to fund his kids going to school or something, right? Like, it's not like he's a big corporation. He's a regular guy just like I am. But like, the the thing is, renting is legitimate if done honestly, and I would not be able, if I were forced to buy a house, I would not be able to live in the quality of house that I do, because like, houses still cost a lot of money to make. There's still materials, there's still labor. People can't afford houses not because they're being bought up by corporations, although that happens. Generally, like, if a company builds a house and puts it on the
sorry,
market,
sorry. Oops.
if
Hello?
yeah,
Sorry, yeah.
okay, yeah. If a company builds a house and puts it on the market, and they're going to sell it based on, the labor that they put into it, based on the materials they use to build it, and then based on if they can get a little bit of profit out of it. Because otherwise, what's the point? What's the point of building it? So, and then it just turns out that because houses are big and expensive and they cost a lot to make, some people can't afford them. I think that's a reasonable explanation, I think.
Well, I mean, and also like, to your point, like the thing that you're saying that some landlords can be legitimate or whatever. Like I follow a lot of these people who is like buy old houses and like reconstruct them and everything. It's kind of hard for me to shed on all of them, right? Like they really do good work, and they make a lot of like places livable. Um, the problem is, right, like that just how extractive do we have, like the things that I don't think that corporations are evil, right? It's just their incentives just like kind of like they they seem to kind of be um they seem to go against what like people might need. Like let's say for example, um Adobe used to release their products for a fixed price, and it was a high price, but people were willing to pay it because like they own the software, right? Now you find yourself renting essentially Adobe Creative Cloud for $50 a month, right? So you wind up actually paying, you wind up paying less if you were using all of their products. You wind up paying more if you're only using a handful of them, right? And it's something like that. But
No,
it's
I
not just
agree.
so
Yeah,
much.
yeah, I
But it's
agree.
not just so much Adobe, right? It's that if you're going to be beholden to subscription prices, then you're never going to own anything again, right? Like you're never going to own any of your games. You're never going to own Adobe again. You're never going to, and then never mind all the different costs that you incur from you know, signing up to Netflix and Crunchyroll and
Yeah, I
basically
mean,
Hulu and whatever.
nobody buys DVDs anymore. They all have Netflix. I know what you mean. Yeah, I don't agree with
Right.
that either. I think that you should be able to. There should at least be the option to buy something and own it, but it should be a higher price than renting it. Of course.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But so that's the thing. Just like you have so many sources that are just extracting from you, and we as a society, like we have means to provide more for people. There's certain things that we shouldn't be paying for. Like it wouldn't be so much of a paying to pay, like $10 for Spotify or whatever, right? If that was like my luxury income, right? Like I get to decide what my luxury stuff is. But when I'm having to think of like, oh shit, well, am I going to be able to feed my kids? Am I going to be able to keep a roof over my head? You know, um, if I'm, for example, trying to switch careers, which is the case, it's tough because switching careers takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of study, takes a lot of and there are certain countries, like for example Iceland, who provides for people who want to change their career, and people wind up changing their career like 3 times in their lifetime, sometimes, until they figure out what's the thing that they actually want to do. Here you can't, like it is very difficult. For example, I was set up to work in art, right? That was my entire background. Yeah, except for me, I tried to become a guitarist like while I was in college, right? So I dropped out to like play guitar in rock bands, and like I thought I was gonna make it and all this stuff. When that all of a sudden didn't pan out, right? Um, I found myself with my options depleted. It was no longer an option. I was getting college paid, so it was a really stupid decision, right? Um, all of a sudden, college wasn't an option, and so I had to go into the workforce. And I got myself in a hole that was like many, many years to get away from, right? So I could like contemplate entrepreneurship. And that is a hole that I hate that people have to fall in. And I know that a lot of this is just like, oh, well, my feelings, and like, oh, well, I hate how the system is, and oh, it's unfair and everything. But I think for a lot of leftists, simply it is like we have that, and mind you, I don't think it's just like on the left, right? I think we're all pretty discontent with certain aspects of how our modern day works, while acknowledging that we're living better than ever, right? Um, but yeah, like I'm not happy. I'm not happy that I had to waste so much of my life just like worried about like if I'm going to have a roof or not, and I couldn't like make this career change just earlier. And maybe and to me, just a simple blame game is just like, okay, well, what are the structures that are in power that like keep this from being a reality and everything? And like, really, it's just that, mind you, I don't subscribe to the fact that like just like capitalism is just inherently evil or whatever. I heard it best described by this developer called Rich Harris as a local maxima. So this is the place that we're stuck in because it was the best option available at the time, and so we're here and we're doing it, and it's not so bad, and definitely we can see a lot of scenarios where like this is worse, right? But where's our Star Trek future? Like it's not going from here. Like
Well, I think
there's
the Star
something that
Trek
we have
future
to change.
comes when we invent replicators, so you can actually make stuff appear out of thin air. So it's not really that big of a deal. You can
Well,
just
I mean, we
make
have
stuff.
so much. We have so much automation, though, right? And that's the reason why, for example, like I don't know if you are willing to even entertain, universal basic income, but that's kind of the thing, right? It's like these companies are making tons of money, automating absolutely the fuck out of everything. We're definitely not going to have jobs for everybody in the future. So what are we going to do about it, right? Like how do we assimilate the fact that like we have been able to get to the point where we can automate all these things? Like how can it be then that like
Well,
it's not a good thing in general?
it's not just automation. It's also the speed of automation versus the rate of what's it called? Our birth rate, basically. Because, for
Birth
example,
rate.
when socialists talk about food, they actually have a pretty decent point. Like if our private companies can make enough food to feed 10 billion people, and we have like 7.7 billion people, and there's still starving people, and they end up throwing away the food rather than giving it to those who need it, there's actually a fair point there. Like you could probably change a few things, because if you're making more than enough food for everybody, and not everyone's getting at least a little bit, then maybe you should look at how you're doing some certain things. Like that makes sense. But like we are definitely not anywhere near post scarcity enough for this to apply to everything. For example, um, you can apply to computers with
Okay.
all of our automation, with all of our advances in technology, with our absolute best efforts over the past 50 years. Humanity has been able to build 2 billion computers. That includes dead computers, that includes obsolete computers, that includes computers that are too specialized to be used by the average person. 2 billion. Even with the most efficient system, you would not be able to get a computer to everybody. So in that
Yeah.
case, what do you do? Because
Well,
there
what
because
you're
there's
doing.
not enough for everybody. And in fact, if it really depends. Like, can you automate the creation of goods faster than people are being born who will need those goods? If the answer is no, then you will never have enough for everybody, even in the best case
Well,
scenario.
well, I mean, but then there's like, what's it called? Built-in obsolescence. Like you're making the problem worse by like making us have to buy the fucking new iPhone, because like otherwise you're not gonna have. Like I'll tell you, just today, right? Like we're everybody's doing Zoom. Everybody, right? Like my kids do Zoom. I have 3 kids, and each of them is in their iPad, right? Like each of them has an iPad. Now, I can't, afford to buy them all brand new iPads. These iPads, like, have been around for a while. Like the oldest one is almost as old as them, right? And the rest of the iPads, like have been bought through the years. And yet, Apple's insistence on like, oh, we're no longer going to support all products means that like they keep seeing worse and worse performance. They keep lagging. They keep like, becoming worse and worse, essentially, even though it's the same machine. The only thing that should happen is that the battery gets a little bit worse. But the battery, in fact, is getting a lot worse. They in software making it so that it gets worse because they want you to replace it. They don't want you to replace the battery, which they could very easily do. They want you to trade it in, except trading it in costs money, right? So if I like this built-in obsolescence, clearly, like it's making us waste more resources, right? Like
No,
things should
I agree.
last.
I agree. But at the
We're
same
making the
time,
problem
like
worse.
I do agree with you. But at the same time, a socialistic Apple would not be able to produce an iPhone for everyone just to be handed out. They don't have near the production capacity.
Yeah. No, for sure.
So like that's still not a solution. Like again, I'm not going to be simping for corporations who have temporary license fees rather than actually selling you a product. That's bullshit. But at the same time, like at the same time, the idea that you can simply redistribute and everything will be okay, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And like food is interesting because food isn't a rental and it can't be a rental. You have to buy the actual physical. It's a good. It's not a service. It's always going to
Right.
be a good. You know.
Yeah.
And it really seems like when you were talking about your own career changes and this and that and how you found yourself in a hole. Well, not to necessarily be callous about it, but I think it's actually a question worth asking. Why is it anybody else's responsibility to pull you out of a hole that you put yourself in?
Because I can be so much more productive when I'm actually doing something that I'm good at, in service of everybody else. Like
Okay.
it was such an enormous fucking waste. Like being on food stamps and like the thing is like I had such a wealth of skill and I just had no it's like really hard for me to find somebody who's willing to take somebody without a degree, you know. And I think things will be better when, for example, we start hiring people who don't have degrees, right? Because I can very easily demonstrate my competence. But if you're not willing to even look at my resume because I don't have the right thing, then that sucks for me, you know. And it's such a waste. Like
No, no,
I'm
yeah,
not really
I get
complaining.
that. Yeah, no,
I'm not really complaining about myself because I'm doing pretty well right now, but like for years it was really bad, and it was just a fucking waste. Like, just if I could have been invested in, right? I would have been paying more taxes, right? I would have been producing more, right? I would be providing more like services, like with real value, rather than just struggling to make ends meet. Like, it's a waste of like my prime years. And mind you, I once again externalize this to like people outside of myself, right? Like, if it's a waste for me, how many people are wasting away in the same way, right? Like, well, Thought Slime is one of them, right? Like, that's why I identify so strongly with him and his videos.
Yeah,
Like,
see,
it's just
I know what you're saying. I know, like, I get it. Like, this idea that, if you could be put on the right path and someone can just give you a leg up, and then and then from that point on you have at least a foundation that you can build on it and become self-sufficient. That actually makes sense to me. Like, I do think there should be like a pretty decent student loan program, because why not? If you get some genius who is living in poverty and will never ever ever get a chance to go to school and actually pull himself out of poverty, and then you give him a student loan, and then he goes to school and he makes something of himself, like, obviously
mind
society is
you,
better off. Obviously society is better
like
off.
a college loan is gonna do the same thing as like our shitty healthcare here does in the US, which is like gonna give money to universities when we know that like they're not the ideal way to learn or to distribute knowledge or
Yeah, yeah.
anything, right?
Well,
Like,
yeah,
so they have a
but
lot of incentives too.
you
But yeah, I get
you
what
know
you're
what I
saying.
mean, though, right? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you can take somebody who's in poverty, who wouldn't normally get a chance, and who would actually be quite good if given the chance, and then you invest in them a little bit, and then they become self-sufficient, and then it pays back to society, dividends. That actually makes sense.
I think I made the mistake though of focusing only on myself though, because for example, Jordan Peterson has a great point, right? Like, IQ, right? It's the classic bell curve, right?
Yes.
What happens at the bottom of the bell curve? Well, it just turns out that we don't have a role for those people in society, and those people are always going to exist, right? And we're not just callous monsters. We know that we need to provide for those people, and we kind of do, right? Um, Probably not as well as we should, right? Or people with mental illness, people with disabilities. Like, we have some programs. I don't know if it's adequate, right? Um, and what about the people who, for example, can't have more than like a basic job because they're like, they only have sufficient IQ for that, or they only have sufficient uh, training for that, right? Like, we don't create roles for these people, and in fact, it turns out that a lot of the times, just like realistically, I think that some people are just unhireable. So what do we do about them? And more, there's been a wealth of jobs that used to exist that no longer will return, right? Like manufacturing jobs. We don't want to go back to work in factories for the most part, unless it's like really cool factories that create very specific products. We don't want to go back to the coal mines. We don't want to go. We're not going to want to keep working transportation either. Like, ideally, the people who like paid the debts of the transportation business, like, once we have automated vehicles, it'd be nice if they could just go on to do something else and not like I mean, what are we going to do for all these people, right? Like,
No, I completely agree. Like, I definitely agree here. Like, you have some people who are just straight up unhireable, and it doesn't matter how much you train them. Doesn't matter what even they want to do. Maybe they have like an IQ of 65 and they can't fucking do anything. Like, there are some people who are just counterproductive at everything that they do, and there is nothing you can do about it. Um, however, like, this idea that we should make everyone, suckle at the teat of the government, it doesn't apply to me, because I don't know how smart I actually am. I don't consider myself to be that smart, but I don't think I'm disabled. I think I can actually stand on my own 2 feet.
yeah,
So
no,
so like, that argument works very well for those people who are at the very low end of the distribution, and I agree that we should do something for those people. But for most people, I definitely think that they are just responsible for their own life's missteps. Like you wanted to change careers several times. That was a risk. There is no reason that anybody other than you should be responsible for that risk.
No, exactly, right? Like once again, you're right. Callously, and I mean, like seriously, if I lived in the forest, right, I couldn't even do any of that, right? I couldn't become a guitarist in the middle of the jungle or whatever. But what I'm saying is, like, you can call it a misstep because I wasn't fortunate enough to like be born in Iceland. But
Well,
had
no,
I
no,
been,
well, no,
right, like,
it's not callousness. It's not callousness. I,
so,
I think I think responsibility is how you frame it, not callousness. Like to say that, okay, if you made a mistake and now you have to pay some kind of a price for that mistake, as long as the price isn't like disproportionate, then
right,
why
but
why shouldn't?
right, but that's a price. Once again, that's a price that I would not like. I wouldn't have had to pay 10 years of my life, for a bad decision if I lived in Iceland, right? Because Iceland takes care of you, mind you,
Well, no,
mind you.
somebody else would
Here's
have to
here's
pay
the
that though. Somebody else that would have to pay it. Like
and somebody
some.
does.
Well, yeah,
No,
but
no, no.
like, why shouldn't it be you though? Like, if someone has to pay it, and like if it's your mistake and somebody has to pay it, whether it's you or it's like the person who paid the taxes that go into the system that you then extract from, you take money out of that system. Somebody's paying for it somewhere along the line. So
Right.
why should it be a taxpayer instead of you?
Oh, because that's what I'm going exactly have to go back to is the fact that I create a lot more value as a programmer than I do as a failed guitarist. So it definitely should behoove everybody that I'm paying more to everybody, right? Like by being as productive as I can. And I can't be when I'm like working retail, but I can be when I'm working as a programmer, right? I contribute more to the economy. I have the possibility of eventually, being able to hire people myself, and this is something that's just locked in while you know like you said, it's an investment, right? Like that my government could do for me. Now mind you, if the government can't afford it, right, then we're screwed. And the thing is that to your credit, and something that I think a lot of people here are blind to, is that obviously government resources aren't unlimited, right? And some things that like the government pays for mean that something else isn't getting paid for, right? We just don't have limited resources or anything like that. And in fact, I know from a friend who is an immigrant from France that in France, a lot of perfectly capable working age adults decide to just coast on the government because it turns out that it's really easy to get benefits, and some of them abuse the system, right? And according to her, it's many of them. I don't want to be an alarmist, but I do think she's right. Probably a lot of people are doing that because, especially if one person starts doing it and finding out that it's okay, then I mean that's what you find here in Miami. Like once somebody starts abusing one thing, people start abusing it all over the place, right? It's the what's called the tragedy of the commons or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
So there is truth to that, right? And once again, if you're gonna go to like Eritrea and like demand that the government do anything for you, assuming they have a government, um, they're not going to have the resources. So no, you can't expect, but it would be nice if you could count on it, is what I'm saying, especially because it winds up paying for itself in cases such as mine. Um,
Well, I mean,
but
there's
but
also
like
the
you said,
problem. There's also a problem that you might not actually pay for it. You know, like you might go into a field that seems it seems like it's booming, and then 5 years it collapses, and now the government doesn't get anything back on
yeah,
their
no, for sure.
investment. I mean, that's why. Here's how I actually think it should work. Um, you should be able to take out a student loan, and then while you're still paying that student loan off, as long as you're paying it continuously, you don't have to pay taxes. That would probably work because then like your taxes are already covered by the payments of your student loan, and the government guarantees that they get their money back, rather than just giving you a bunch of money to go to school for a degree that might actually just be completely worthless 5-10 years down the road.
Well, okay, so like yours is definitely a solution, right? And I think that's close to the way that it works because at least in the US, like you do get some subsidies for like returning to school, right? So it's not like completely hopeless. Here's the thing though, right? We also know that universities are a local maxima, and it turns out that like there's a bunch of people who learn off of videos from YouTube who are better developers than people who like spend 4 years in university, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
it's just knowledge you can get like very easily online. So it's not something that just belongs to the universities. So why can't you, for example, instead of giving money to somebody to attend school for 4 years, why couldn't you say, as a government, saying like, hey, you know what, we can't afford all of these people, but however, why don't we suggest and negotiate with like jobs, with engineering jobs, to hire people who, for example, there's this thing called free code camp, right? Like people who do free code camp successfully, right? Or who demonstrate the knowledge required to work in these companies should be getting hired rather than people who merely have the degree. Like the degree is supposed to say that like you know how to do things. It turns out that that's not true, right? And it turns out that people are able to get that knowledge somehow else. So that somehow else is probably a more cost efficient thing than like 4 years of college. So we
Yeah,
could be
I
doing
mean,
that, and it's true that there's many solutions that we could like bring to the problem. And it's true that yeah, you can't expect other people to just want to. But here's the thing, right? Like there's tons of things that we as like, for example, representatives, like direct representatives of our government, could do and decide on. Like that's what I think the point of democracy is, right? Like that we get together and we say like, okay, well, how much are we willing to spend on these people that you know are unhireable? How much are we willing to spend on all this stuff? And the problem is we have no government transparency, and we definitely have incentives within politics, not corporate only, but like also just power and cronyism and corruption, right? That prevent us from being able to like transparently see what it is that we're spending money on and what the effects of certain programs should be. So there's not like, you know, yeah, like we don't have like good feedback on, like for example, if we spend money on a certain program, it's very hard to see if it yields result until years time, right? Like it would be nice to have more immediate feedback, and you can do that with transparency. But the people in power, not just for corporate reasons, once again, because I am not just demonizing them, but the people who are corrupt inside of government have the incentives to like block the transparency, lest their own crimes and the corruption be revealed. So we don't have a really good system. I definitely ascribe perhaps more culpability to capitalism than you do. But the incentives created by capitalism are some of the problem.
yeah, I mean,
We just need to figure out what we could actually spend in. And I do think that a focus on transparency and on like, you know, a fast change and like immediate feedback could take us to a better place. Like we have more resources than we're counting on, is what I'm saying.
Yes, see, like I agree with most of the things you've outlined as problems. Like they actually are problems. However, for me, it's like those problems have consistently been and are being solved by capitalism. It's taking time. It's taking several hundred years because complicated problems take time to solve. You can't do it overnight. But also like like if you were to have a less globalistic corporatism and a more local capitalism, you'd solve a lot of this. I think you'd solve a lot of this. I think socialism
Sorry,
would just
can you
make it
repeat that?
worse.
Because I didn't.
Okay, yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't.
yeah. So basically, I agree with most of the problems that you're talking about. That
No,
they
I meant
actually
your
are problems.
substitution. Sorry.
Oh, okay, yes, yes. I think that socialism would make all the problems worse. Like I think it'd make it quite worse. I think that replacing a globalistic corporatist structure with like a local capitalist one, where most jobs are in fact small businesses or like small operations, or a few regional operations, like not like not these corporations where the people who live in them do not give a shit about the people that they actually serve because they live in a completely different country, like not that shit. But like local capitalism, I think, has consistently been solving these problems for the past couple hundred years, and I think it will continue to do so. I think socialism makes it all worse. I think it
I
takes all of these problems and makes them significantly more worse than even corporatism makes them.
Okay, well, the whole replacing this whole system with local capitalism,
Hmm.
I buy it completely. Like if that's like completely like let's do it today. Like I definitely think that's a better solution than what we have now. Um, um, and that's the thing. Like, it's just, once again, like capitalism being a local maxima. It's not that it's just. I mean, there's a lot of things come from the incentives that it puts in place, But okay, I could live with that. And then further, like, if we manage as a society to, like, first of all, if we can find the way to, like, assess like what our resources actually are, right? Like, what we're actually counting with, how much money do we actually have as a society, and how much we're willing to spend on the future, right? Knowing that, like, people are not going to try to, like, milk the system for political gain and all this stuff, things that we can't count on because there will always be bad actors, right? But in an ideal situation, right, um, that money that we're all pooling together, right, to form what we call a nation, right, that is supposed to be going back to us to, like, help us start new businesses and, like, to cover for our people who can't work and all of the things. I mean, assuming that we want to pay for them, because once again, like, we have to want to, right? Um, and if we're able to assess this, right, we might be able to assess that, like, hey, it turns out that, for example, we can afford a universal basic income, and in fact, that puts less of a burden on smaller businesses, because all of a sudden they don't need to hire somebody at, let's say, a $15 minimum wage, which I know is pretty expensive for a lot of existing small businesses, right? And even though we're pushing for it, all of a sudden you only need to maybe incentivize them enough to want to, like, hey, maybe I can give you $3 an hour. It doesn't matter. You're getting universal basic income, and then on top of that, you're making a little bit more. That's actually one of the reasons why, like, Vosh isn't crazy about this. It's because, like, it's incrementalism, right? But I'm okay with that incrementalism. I think Vosh would be too, honestly, just for now, because it's a better solution, And
Well, the big problem with UBI is that I've always had the view that money simply represents labor previously performed. And so when you
yeah,
simply give people money, like that, and they haven't performed labor, like I think that's going to completely fuck up your economy, like really, really badly.
it can. And don't think that I don't have my reservations, because once again, my friend in France, who has, a lot of her own friends who she, like, loves and knows and everything, and she has to recognize that they're milking the system. Or like me here in Miami, where, like, the Trumpist Cubans hypocritically are the ones who are, like, milking the system. Yeah, I know that it can go badly, and the tragedy of the commons is, like, a real problem that we need to contend with. Like, I don't think that it's so easy. I definitely think that it is obvious, it should be to you and anybody who, like, is listening, that I have some pretty idealistic views about, like, what we could be doing for everybody. But even if we disagree on that, we need to find a way to agree on the direction that at least we want to move, and, like, right now we're in stalemate, because, for example, if that's what you're telling me, you want to, like, a local corporatist thing, you don't want these, like, global corporations, like, basically
Well, like
forcing their power on us and everything.
if the global corporations
Into
have to exist because of just like how do you get certain things that only exist in one part of the world? Well, you have to export them. Like on some level, you have to have some kind of international trade. So fair enough. But like I
Yeah,
do think that its political power should be restricted for sure.
yeah. There's a lot of things, like, I know this is a lot of idealism and everything, but I do recognize, for example, that even if we switch to socialism, doesn't mean that other countries are going to, which means that they're still going to be exploitative, which means that we need to contend not with our, like, big, bad corporations, but now with other countries' big bad corporations, like China
Well,
right
the
now
thing
is
is,
just
I actually think that socialism
burning
is.
Africa.
I think socialism is actually 100% exploitative. I really do.
Well, because you interpret it as what, like you said, strong arming from, like, the side of the government, right? Like, we're just forcing like, everybody to, like, give up their
Well, the
private
thing is,
property, or
it's kind of like I said. People call themselves like Vosh calls himself a libertarian socialist, right? There is no such
right?
thing because you will have to use force eventually. Like if let's say that someone that the United States, you know, with like a pretty decent majority, a 60-40 majority votes in a fully libertarian socialist government, libertarian socialist president, majority libertarian socialists in the House and in the Senate.
Cool. Yeah.
Well, now you're going to have to use force on that 40% who don't want to do it.
Yeah, no, and that's the same thing that happened in Cuba. You're right about that. Like, wherever there's resistance, you can consider the bad actors of your complex system, and yeah, that resistance is like real. Like, for example, like I said, if there's an incentive to not work more than others, right? Like, there's going to be less production. If yeah, I just in the same way that you know, you say that like exploitativeness is not inherent to capitalism, even though I see it that way. It's, I guess, the way that I see that socialism is not inherently exploitative and you could make it work, even though you don't see it that way. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah,
And
it's
since I think
because
those are,
well, I think there's a difference though. It's because like all forms of basically of centralization it's going to require some kind of force somewhere basically, but you can definitely have like a libertarian capitalism where the main ethos is I'm my own independent person, leave me alone, and that's not exploitative at all.
oh, actually, I made a mistake. So yeah. No, but you're talking about like distributing,
What do you
not
mean?
centralizing, right? Like you're talking about, like, for example, let's distribute the role of corporations to like smaller individual entities, right?
No, actually, I don't think I'd use the word distribute, frankly.
Well, okay.
I think it's more like you
No, that's
you
definitely my
you
own word.
you deregulate various markets. You allow regular people who are so inclined to properly compete with to properly compete with large corporations, and then because I think generally regular people will probably win out if given the opportunity to do so. You know,
Right. I think so too.
and then I think you will have a robust middle class with a bunch of entrepreneurs.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. Like, I think that's definitely like a better local maxima than what we have right now. Like, completely. So my only thing there is that um, instead of just like stopping there, though that's far better. Like, if we want to talk about like policy, for example, and you say that you're comfortable with that, and like my like weird fucking lefty ideas you can't subscribe to, I'll completely back you on, like, just based on that premise. Like, I think that would be incredibly better and incredibly more beneficial than what we have right now. And like, I think that might like sustain us for like a while longer, so that leftism doesn't need to come up again. But I mean, for like our lifetimes, you know what I mean? The I Because the thing is that when people are pushing for like revolution and everything, bro, like, I don't want to live in times of war. Like, it's bad enough that we're like living through like a historical pandemic. Like, I don't want to be living through war. Like, I don't think people realize how fucking horrible that is, and how often it just plain doesn't succeed. And also that there's no way that the common person is gonna like get behind something that's like violent and like obviously makes your life worse. And I think honestly, like it's I don't put the burden on anybody who doesn't agree with leftism to make leftism work. Like, I think leftists have to make leftism work. We have to make it appealing, and we have to, like, for example, say like, hey, look, we've created a bunch of businesses that are not exploitative, where you actually, if you come to work with us, right, it's a worker co-op, and we just take care of you, right? Like you're saying, the market would exist regardless, right? And within the market structure, I mean, the way that I see it, I could be wrong. Um, if we create these businesses, right, like we're the supposed leftists, right? Why aren't we creating these businesses where like it's so much better to work in, where we'll take care of you, we'll give you pension, we'll whatever? We haven't demonstrated that this is even like able to exist, right?
I'd
And
actually
we've
say
seen,
the opposite. Have you heard about you know the biggest worker co-op, right?
is it a farms co-op? No, I'm not sure.
Yeah, here we go. The Mondragon Corporation is a worker co-op
Okay.
based in Spain. You've heard of that?
Mm, maybe.
Well, they had a big scandal recently. Not recently. It was
Mhm.
within the past 20 years or something. And they're a very successful worker co-op, but it turns out that when you have a worker co-op that survives for as long as they have, which I think is like 70 years now or something, you end up with like these families controlling voting blocks within the company, and
Oof.
promotions are given out to like members of families now. So like
Oh.
it's definitely susceptible to the same kinds of problems that regular companies are. The difference is that like when a regular company goes bankrupt, it's only one person, or like the stockholders. They all lose their money. One person goes, the CEO, the founder, whoever, they go bankrupt. But like if everyone has money put into a corporation and the corporation fails, everyone loses their money. That's kind of the difference. Like if I want to start a company, and let's say that I'm going to start this company and I need $500,000 to buy the building and get the equipment and get the materials and hire staff, and
Yeah.
then the company just dies within 6 months. I've lost $500,000. My staff, they all lose their jobs, and that's not nothing. That's still pretty significant. But it's not the same thing as losing your job and losing all the money that you sunk into the business. It's a different order of magnitude of disaster, And I think that's why companies are probably better suited for a more hierarchical system, because you know your average part-time worker who's just going to be running the cash at your shop, just running the till, they're not going to be able to afford, say, $100,000 to throw into the pot to start the company. Like
Yeah.
if you're starting a worker co-op, everyone has to pay in. But if you're starting a regular company, only you have to pay in if you're the founder.
No, I mean, and there's the possibility of starting a co-op and then just like keeping it running, right? Like it would have like an initial group of people who like get it going, and then once you can start expanding it and start hiring people, then you can make it like, so that everybody's getting paid the same and everything. It doesn't need to like be like, oh, hey, everybody pull in this money to start this thing. It could be like, hey, I'll put in. It's kind of like a group of friends, right? Like maybe one of the friends has the money, and then the other friend has the know-how, and the other one's just like the comedic relief or whatever. You all get together, you all have different functions, right? But if you manage to make it work, right, and the comedic effect really is funny enough that everybody's like always cool with him and he doesn't become the annoying asshole, right, like that everybody just wants to kick out, like what I'm saying is that it could work, but who does it fall on to make such a structure work? I mean, like the thing that you told me about the Spain place, like that shows, hey, we haven't really completely thought it through, right? Like if that could happen, and I mean, I want to look into it because that sounds interesting, right? Like that's a very real way in which it could fail. Like you can't, because you're making a good point about like that now everybody bears the responsibility for making that business, not only for making it work rather, but like the risk, you're all taking it on, right? Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question. I mean, and it's not something that I think you can just press in society. I definitely do think that if it's going to work, we have to demonstrate that it works first, and then we can be like, hey, look, it worked in this instance, but we don't have a lot of those instances. And that's why I'm not that kind of a leftist. Like in my sense, like I'm not trying to be like one of these like, oh, I'm not that kind of type of girl or whatever. I'm different from the other girls or whatever. I'm just saying that like, yeah, I recognize that there's a lot of idealism on my part. I want to like drive home that like, dude, this is realistic. Like most people who just like have ideas or like who have political leans, right? Like we're not experts in our field, right? Like we have a feeling of like where we want the like society to go, and like we fucking like vote and like we voice our opinions on Twitter and shit, but like it sometimes doesn't go much more than that. It would be nice though if we got to try more, right? If there was more effort like to try. And like political discourse is such shit, like because it's so much like Twitter and like the hot takes and like what the media is saying, and like because it's such a circus, like that you can't sit down and be like, okay, well, I know I have my beliefs, right? Like I know that I would love it if like we could just be like, I have a commie friend from Cuba, like one of the few that you'll find in Miami, who actually had a great time in Cuba because he was an artist, and so he was provided for and he could just paint, right? And so for me, being of an art background, I'll be like, yeah, I could thrive under that, but I don't think everybody could, right? And so we all are gonna, like, for example, like I don't think that I could ever agree with like religious fundamentalists about a lot of things, But I think their points of view are valid. I mean, if you really do think that, God exists, and, if you really do think that, certain things that are mentioned in the Bible, like your particular interpretation of them are like how things are, yeah, we're going to have irreconcilable differences. But I think we're like leaving a lot on the table that like we could agree with about like where we could be headed. That's better than the pile of shit that we have right now. Like,
Well, to be
completely
fair,
change
I'm
that.
sure if your friend made anti-communist art, he wouldn't be thriving. You know, it's not like there's a guarantee of human rights there.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, no, absolutely.
I've got about 10 minutes left.
Holy crap, man! We've been talking for so long. Like, I
Yeah.
had no idea that this is what you wanted to do. But this is a lot of fun.
I've got
Honestly,
I got 10
I had
minutes
a lot of
left.
fun.
And the thing is, you were like I was mentioning before that how I think that Trump, I'm neutral on Trump. I don't like some of the things he's done. I like some of the other things that he's done. I told you that I had a list. I do want to show you the list before I have to go.
Cool.
Because when it comes to like just empowering people to stand on their own 2 feet, Trump has not done too bad of a job, unironically. And this is, and it's funny because I'll send you the article in Discord, and I'll pull it up on screen. I think this button should work.
I mean, yeah, I think that's one of Trump's biggest appeals, right? Like, he does appeal to the people that think, okay, I'll check this out. Yeah.
So
I mean,
this comes from the New York Times, and the New York Times is not a pro-Trump outlet by any stretch.
Yeah.
They're very anti-Trump.
Yeah.
And this is a list of Trump's accomplishments. And like there's like 100 points here, and I don't think we need to go through all of them, but like there's some interesting ones, right? Like, let me just scroll down here. Like, let's go to the economic ones, because like, okay, here you go. Trump has signed a bill making CBD and hemp legal. Okay, that was true.
That's cool.
Trump's EPA has given $100 million to fix the water infrastructure problem in Flint, Michigan. That was both Obama and Trump. They both did that, so good for them.
Okay, that's cool.
Let's see here. Trump signed a law ending the gag orders on pharmacists that prevented them from sharing money-saving information, and that's true, actually. So basically, like pharmacists couldn't tell you if there was a cheaper option. They had to go with what the corporations told them they should be recommending. And Trump,
He signed that, legit?
Yep.
I'm surprised by that, to be honest.
That's key. Here we go. Trump signed the Allow States and Victims to Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act. So, okay, he did that. Trump signed a bill to require airports to provide spaces for breastfeeding moms. And he did that.
What?
Yeah. It was the Friendly Airports for Mothers Act of 2017. It was put forth in 2017, and Trump signed it. Let's see. The 25% lowest paid Americans enjoyed a 4.5 income boost in November of 2019, which outpaces a 2.9% gain in earnings for the country's highest paid workers. And that seems to
be attributed to him?
That seemed, well, I mean, maybe not, because that's just the economy, not necessarily Trump, but it is true.
Right.
It is true until the coronavirus hit. Basically,
I mean, the thing is,
the economy was booming until the coronavirus hit, and a lot of this will show that.
Right, and I mean, that's true for all countries. The thing is that, like, okay, so, right, my criticism would be, okay, not all of these things can be ascribed specifically to him, right? It was maybe things that he was, like, political bartering and all this stuff, right? Like, which is fine, because that's what everybody does.
That's still good,
right?
yeah. Like,
it's still, like, a net good, for sure, right? So, like, these are all reasons to, like, think that maybe he's done an adequate job with some things. It's more like in aggregate and in, let's be honest, in optics, right? Like, a lot of us just plain don't like the guy, like, and so part of it is just like the way that we feel about him, and part of it is the way that we feel about him exaggerates certain things that are able to be criticized, right? Like his response.
Like the honest truth is, like, I don't like Trump personally either. I probably would not want to hang out with him, but if he does a good job, he does a good job. You know, like I would not elect somebody to be my friend. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, and you seem to be far more pragmatic than myself in that sense. Like, I mean, I'm an artist, so like, yeah, I'm emotions based. For sure. Like, I think,
Here, I'm gonna keep going a little bit here. We have
go
he
ahead.
signed the Save Our Seas Act, which funds $10 million per year to clean garbage in the ocean. So fair enough. He signed a bill this year allowing some drug imports from Canada so that prescription prices would go down. And I think, like, should Trump get elected a second term, I think he actually wants to try and tackle healthcare. So that'd be pretty amazing to see the Republicans try and do that. I don't think the Republicans want to, but I think Trump's going to do it.
Well, I mean, he's had the opportunity.
Yeah.
Uh,
Let's see.
He's had the Senate. Like,
Well, to be fair, he said that he wanted to try and run Obamacare more efficiently first, and he said that he basically tried it for a couple of years, and he said he couldn't do it because
yeah, I
the
just
system itself
plain
was
don't believe
flawed.
him.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I think he's more concerned. I mean, of course that's debatable, and
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, until he doesn't put forward a plan, like we can just speculate, and that's the problem, right? Like it'd be cool if he like something on the table so that we could all be like, oh damn, like to tell you the truth, back in 2016, like there were some points of what like Trump was pushing specifically for healthcare that I was like, well, we got Trump, but he wants to do this with healthcare, so I guess that's pretty good. That was 2016. Like now it's 2020, and he still hasn't done any of those things, and it is disappointing. Like I don't want my nation to fail. Like if Trump was doing a good job, despite how much I hate him, like I would still be inclined to not like him just because of his personality.
Yeah.
But it would be easier for me to admit like the things that he's done well.
Well,
That
let's see here, because there's some I think there's some ones here that you might actually like quite a bit. So he signed an executive order this year that forces all health providers to disclose the cost of their services so that Americans can comparison shop. That's actually true. Let's see here. I want to get down to some of the interesting ones a bit further down. Hold on just a second. Oh yeah, here we go. So this is one that the left they champion this, and they're just so wrong. So in 2018, President Trump signed the groundbreaking First Step Act, a criminal justice bill that enacted reforms that make our justice system fairer and help former inmates successfully return to society. That was true. The First Step Act reforms addressed inequalities in sentencing laws that disproportionately harm Black Americans, and also reformed mandatory minimums that created unfair outcomes. The First Step Act expanded judicial discretion in the sentencing of nonviolent crimes. Over 90% of those benefiting from the retroactive sentencing reductions in the First Step Act are Black Americans. Now, these are all true things.
Now, these are all really good things, but he could do a few of them and like not embolden the far right and the racists, and like not play into the QAnon shit, and I would be way more pleased. Like, these are all
how does he
legitimately
embolden
good.
the far right?
Well, I mean, I don't want to waste like the thing is like I don't want to like go over your time. You said you had 10 minutes, but like I mean, embolden the far right, like I like that's really weird for me to like even have to like. I mean, he posts tweets of like a guy saying white power, refuses to take it down, and like gives excuses as to why it took so long.
I've never seen this before.
Says that.
Do you have the tweet? I've never seen it before. That's news to me.
Oh yeah, I can give it to you. I don't have it on hand or whatever.
Okay,
then he always plays it down anything having to do with all his alt-right supporters and like particularly like the Proud Boys and everything by saying like, oh yeah, I don't know them, but also Antifa's horrible, right? Like, oh yeah, people who are like claim to be my big supporters have like killed a ton of people, but like this other organization that like has killed one person. Well, I mean, I would like to say zero, but like I knew that violence was gonna eventually beget violence.
Have the Proud Boys killed people?
I meant the far right in general. I think they're just like violent and intimidation. I see them more as like trying to intimidate people into not voting than I wasn't trying to ascribe that specific thing to the Proud Boys.
Okay.
Like
No,
I
I
think,
understand. I understand.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of Cubans in the Proud Boys. Like they're not the racists. You know what I mean?
Like, yeah, I don't think you can call the Proud Boys like a white supremacist group. There's a lot of non-white people in there, you know. Like,
Yeah, no, they're just ultra nationalist. Yeah, no,
yeah.
I, I mean, yeah, no, I mean, then there's the fact that like the QAnon thing is like so predicated on like all these, like like when you get down to it, like theories about like, oh, the Jewish question, about like immigration, all this bullshit and everything, and he plays into that. He doesn't like, um, because there's his supporters. He doesn't understand that, and so he's like, yeah, sure, yeah, rapists, Democrats, sure, you're anti-pedophiles. That's all I understand. Um,
Well, to be
like
fair,
all of these
that
things that
I don't
optically,
know what QAnon is either. To be honest, I haven't. I have not looked into that yet. I don't know what it is.
you'll have
So
fun. You'll have fun. So it's one of the more, like, if it wasn't so scary, it's one of the more fun conspiracy theories.
okay.
But no, just simply the fact that neo-Nazis themselves and racists themselves feel emboldened by him, like outside of everything else, means that he's playing to the things that they respond to. And one could argue that, like, oh well, they would be responding either way. They're, it has nothing to do specifically with Trump. Yeah, but it's too many instances of him just like going along with it, or to like demonize take the time to demonize Antifa for things they haven't done, when it's been, the far right or the neo-Nazis or whatever, play down the importance of the neo-Nazis, even though they've, like been at the root of like every act of terrorism, here in the United States. I mean, late, obviously.
Hmm.
Yeah, like that matters to me, because I mean, I'm Mexican, dude. Like that's scary to me. You know what I mean? Like, to see these
Well,
people emboldened and to feel like we're the real whatever. Like, bro, it's
well,
damn scary. You know what I mean?
no, I understand you, but like if this is the standard, that like Trump doesn't specifically say anything about these people, but they feel emboldened because Trump is in office. If that's the standard, then couldn't we hold, you know, Bernie or AOC or any other prominent socialist, couldn't we hold them accountable for all of the actual violence that Antifa has done? Because there has been at least some actual violence.
Well, no, because they're not as. Whoa, you're saying because they're emboldened, right? We're not just saying that they're actively.
What do you mean?
No, no, no. I was gonna defend it from a different point of view, but like the point of view that I was gonna defend it from doesn't really make sense. Maybe.
You see, I don't really see that. Like, I don't think
No, maybe.
QAnon or the Proud Boys are Trump's fault. I don't
It's
think the
not
neo Nazis
only.
are Trump's fault. I don't think Antifa is Bernie's fault. You know, I think they are
Yeah,
their
no.
own things.
It's not only maybe. It's honestly that I'm like actually afraid, because I know that there's a number of, like, for example, grandmas who don't you know kind of like the political scene as it is, right? Like, and all they see is like these scary people with masks and everything. There's a guy that I follow, Brian Lunduk. He does the Linux videos on YouTube. So like something that has nothing to do with this, and he's legitimately terrified of Antifa because he just sees this as like this violent movement. And I don't think he does it in bad faith. I think he's just, an aging dad who sees all these like people in masks, and for him is scary. So yeah, honestly, I am afraid that maybe because we're on the left, we're just acting the same way that the people on the right are about the extreme right. Like maybe I am excusing a lot of Antifa's scarier antics, because like to me they're not scary because they're not the people threatening me, whereas the people on the far right definitely are. So there's an element of that. I honestly don't know. I know that we're all in our own echo chambers, and I know my echo chamber tends to like lean far more to the left than probably yours.
Hmm.
Maybe there's a case to be made there, honestly.
Well, yeah, like think of it this way. You know, if you finally got around to starting your business and you have a little shop, and you're a small business and you can't really afford insurance, and then Antifa comes and during a protest and burns your business down, like you're fucked. You're back to square one. You know, like you're starting over again. No one's gonna want that.
I don't think that's been Antifa. Like the thing is that I think the riots. I mean, once again, if you're going to conflate one thing, you should conflate the other, right? Like if you're conflating like the Proud Boys and the neo-Nazis, like I know they don't conflate themselves with each other. They just seem to move in the same circles. And here in the left, right, we have Antifa, we have the rioters, right, and we have the BLM protesters. They're essentially different groups that maybe have some intersections, right? Like, and we don't consider them the same. But I think that's just, I mean, it might be the same thing that they're doing on the right. You know, like for me, it's a lot of opportunists within the BLM movement, you know, who are like, hey, we're kind of like caught in the feeling of it, right? Let's start a sublime, you know, like riots on the street, you know, tell me where were you kind of thing, you know, or we just start burning shit, right? Like there's an appeal to riots to just bring on the people that just want to see chaos. So they're not Antifa, they're not BLM, but they're adjacent. And I mean, ultimately I see it. I see why people are scared and bothered about this. You know what I mean? Like it's a fair point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, I actually do think that they're Antifa, and it's because I understand the tactics of the Black Bloc. You know, they will blend themselves into a peaceful protest, and then, you know, they'll duck around a corner, they'll throw a black mask on, then they'll go out there, they'll throw some Molotovs, they'll throw a brick through a window or something, and then they'll come back around, pull the mask off, and be like, "Oh no, I was peaceful the whole time," you know, like this is something that's been well documented that Antifa does since like the 1930s or the 20s, whatever it is. I gotta look up when was Antifa founded. Hold on.
Well, there's also the fact that, like, for example, from my echo chamber, right? Like what we've been hearing is that, oh no, these are actually right wingers infiltrating and pretending to be Antifa so they can escalate the thing. That's hard to corroborate even for me. That could be the case, but that's the same thing. Like right now, there's so much chaos going on that like what I say versus what you say, who these people are, who exactly is looting. Like definitely, it's bad for optics. So you can make the case that like, oh no, it is the right wingers because they're just making it to make us look bad. I know that, yeah, that's probably not always true. Even though I do subscribe to the fact that that's sometimes true. Like I do think that there's some people who are just like having fun and like, oh yeah, let's just like throw a brick in this. Like there's some people who, you know, and like you're saying, like maybe there are some people who like legitimately have like ill intent and you know they want to get away with shit without it being ascribed to the movement. Yeah, I mean those are all things that could be.
I mean, you could look at it the other way around, where like, let's say, you know, 9/11 happens, and instead of Bin Laden 2 months later coming out on tape saying that he did it, or that his organization Al Qaeda did it, he could just say, "Oh yeah, I knew those 18 guys, but they didn't, like, it wasn't my organization. They were acting on their own." You know, like it's very easy to claim that an organization is not an organization if you're decentralized enough and you're constantly rotating between different masks. But that doesn't mean that there aren't individuals who are responsible.
Well, so my bias keeps me from seeing what's going on as that, but it is just that, like my bias. And I do recognize that, dude, like when I started seeing some of the things that they were doing over there, like when they closed it off and like they started that Chaz thing or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
like I still don't know what that is. It sounds like a
Well,
fun art project
I
to
did
me.
like an hour-long video essay on the Chaz. The Chaz was an attempt at founding an anarchist-style government without the concept of policing. So they took over 6 city blocks, they expelled all the police from the city blocks, and they basically ran the show for about 2 months. And or maybe it's like a month and change. And there was widespread property damage, widespread looting. There were 6 murders. There were shootings constantly. And there were just nightly riots. And eventually the police had to come in and restore order. And
Well, I'll
they
tell you
actually
that.
had to like storm it with SWAT teams to because what had happened inside the Chaz is that in the absence of an actual structure, a gang sprung up and just ran the whole thing. So you had gang members running the city.
See, I've heard, like, from the little that I've heard, I know that it's something like that. And I think that, like, um, I know from my impression when I first heard about that, like, I believed it. Like, right? Like, I heard it described and I was like, damn, is that something that we would do? Yeah, probably. Like, it just sounds, it just sounds stupid enough that, like, I completely, like, I was like, fuck, this is not good for optics, guys. Like, what are we doing? Like it just seems to me like something that like Portlanders or whatever would do, you know, like those people are kind of like on the hippie side of this whole shit, and like dude, like here you're trying to be pragmatic and like, come on, guys, let's just like, you know, open up the economy a little bit more, you know, let's move in the direction of the left and everything. And then somebody does like that, and like, dude, like it's really easy to frighten your grandma who already like, has these fears about communism to be like, look what the communists are doing over there in the West Coast, you know, like, yeah, like we have to consider optics, and like that whole thing was dumb. Like it's interesting from like a sociological perspective, but yeah, really bad for optics. And honestly, like, yeah, I guess it's like a similar thing to something bad happens on the alt-right, and you know, a lot of people are like, wait, that has nothing to do with us. Like, I'm not a neo-Nazi. Like, why the fuck are you calling me a Nazi? You know, just because we happen to have, you know, our political lean seems to fall somewhere in the place where like you want to pull us together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what you mean, but this is the thing. Like, to go back to the original point, I'm not sure if Trump purposefully emboldens people. Like, I like the media does honestly ignore this part. I've seen clips of Trump saying that neo Nazis are bad, that the alt right is bad, that that the fascists are bad. Like, he has repudiated these things several times, but you're never going to actually hear it. You're never going to hear it on the mainstream media because they do have an agenda that they want to push. You know, so like, I don't know.
They definitely do.
Sorry. Oh
I
yes.
mean, the mainstream media,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So like I don't know if it's fair to say that like it's Trump's fault, for example, that there are that, you know, the alt right exists. I don't think so. And I don't think it's anyone on the left's, like any kind of prominent leftist's fault that that Antifa exists. Like, people are saying like it's Joe Biden's fault or it's Bernie Sanders' fault. You know, these are the Bernie Sanders riots. Like, no, they're not. Come on, guys. No,
Yeah.
no.
No, I mean, the thing is that, bro, like the MAGA hats and everything. I'll just say this: like, for people who are sufficiently on the left to have that right wing bias, right? Like to, for us who like we just find that entire like nebulous, way of living like just scary, and just in general like what the hell is going on over there, like there seems to be a lot of racism or whatever. We're not really informed into what's going on over there, right? Like we don't know the specifics. To us it's just scary, and to us we just see that like Trump seems to be leaning into that, whether rightly or wrongly. That's like the way that we're gonna feel, right? Like we're gonna still be scared that like, oh shit, like this is what he's doing, like regardless. Like
Mm-hmm.
I
Well, I would say that like there are definitely, you know, alt right people out there. There are definitely fascists out there. There are definitely people who would be racist out there. Like, it's stupid to say that they don't exist. They obviously exist. But like, if you were to talk to a generic conservative and really listen to all the reasons that they're voting Trump, I think you'll find that they're not unreasonable, that they're not hateful. They just have a different view of how things are going. You know.
No, I agree, and that was my big shock, right? Like when I was forced to contend with the fact that like 50% of my country voted for this guy that I thought was just like, no way he's gonna get elected, right? Like I was like, damn, bro, how far into my own echo chamber am I that like I can't even see why they would vote for him? Like I know that there has to be a lot of reasonable people voting for him, and sure enough, that's when I like discovered that this guy that I follow, Eli the computer guy, voted for him, and that Brian Lunduk seemed to be leaning that way, and that just a lot of people that I know, a lot of, for example, the people in the crafting community and whatever, who seem to be leaning that way because he was talking business, he was talking the economy, and like from that point of view, I could like start to see it, like
Well,
that.
well, you know, if you wanted to break out of your echo chamber between then and now, watching Vosh probably didn't help.
No, honestly, like I think that helped me. I mean, I don't know if you'd say help, but like watching help has helped me like at least identify a lot of the ways that I feel about things. Like I'm gonna tell you, like I really like Vosh because I like his abrasive personality, and I like eh, he's just a sexy guy with a sexy beard. He's a good personality, But the one that I really feel strongly with is Thoughts Line. He's Canadian too. I don't know if you know him, but
No, I don't know who that is. No.
he's also Canadian. He talks about like leftist stuff, but like he talks about it most from a perspective that I understand a lot more, which is like that whole, hey, I'm a disaffected person who like fucking dealt with the ills of capitalism and kind of sick and tired of it, and like I kind of want to know what's more, and he's farther along his like uh, farther along his path that he understands those concepts. Like I don't know at which point I'd find like pushback where I'm like, oof, I'm not willing to go that far left, kind of a thing, you know.
Mhm.
And honestly, I don't even want to go in that direction because I think there's like a lot of leeway for like to find a place that is like more comfortable for more of us globally. That's the thing, it has to be global, man, because like the way that it's panning out, right, like the English speaking world, I mean, we're like almost the entire world online other than China, which is like an intranet, right? And a lot of ideas that come from one place wind up affecting the rest of us, right? Like we were just a connected world, so why not in general move in a direction that we find all collectively find more comfortable than the current incarnation that we're living with, right? Like how do we get to the fucking Star Trek future, you know?
Yeah, see, I
And
don't think that's actually a good idea. A lot of the standards of the rest of the world just objectively fucking suck. Most of the rest of the world does not have our standard of living, does not have universal human rights, does not have a conception that is not collectivist, and I would find living up to the global standard to be terrible. Actually,
well, I'm talking about the English speaking world. So you're talking about mostly countries that are very similar to us, right? We're talking about a lot of European countries. We're talking about Australia. We're talking about you guys. We're talking about us. Um, you know, we share a common tongue, right? There's a
hmm
lot of culture there and everything. Like that's what I meant. Like us, like the people who would understand, right? Like for example, you're Canadian, but we're talking about like politics and policies that like affect the U.S.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So it's worth finding some common ground because maybe the ideas that are coming from your country are gonna work in my country, and we can all move in that general direction. I'm not trying to like pull the entire globe together. I mean, you know, Africa's still Africa. They're being raped by China right now. Like the, we can't be adopting policies like where there are no policies established, and the ones who are like moving in that colonialist route are China.
Well,
Like no.
it's not just that. It's the fact that like you have Islamic states, and any kind of, I think, religious based theocracy is just a bad idea. Like if the global standard means that we're going to be, we're permissible of like genital mutilation or killing gay people because it's against Islam or something. I'm not down for that at all. Fuck that.
Yeah, I mean, I come from the atheist community. I think a lot of people, on my side of the aisle, like, we did start out over there, and
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of people
I'm
who
I'm an
wind up in the
atheist
alt
too.
right.
I'm an atheist too. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, dude, there's an aspect of that honestly, I think a lot of the people on the left, because the Muslims in our country are so relative, like, no, not even relatively, like they're well integrated, right? Like all the Muslims that I know here in the United States, like they seem to be first Americans and then Muslims.
hmm
And I think that stops a lot of people from the left who are like inclined to just defend everybody, to stop them from seeing the real cultural differences that there are, like just in ideology. And like you're saying, in collectivist ideology, like China also like has some very kooky ideas about like what constitutes a healthy uh, let's say government, aside from just because they are collectivists, they're very collectivist, and we're individualists, like yeah, there are differences, mind you. I think that the gap is like we need to close the gap, right? Because for example, we don't feel other with like Japan, right? Like your name is Otaku, right?
Yeah.
Like we like can I say that we agree that we like Japan?
Yes. Yes. That's fine.
Yeah, dude, and like South Korea is going in that direction, right? Like South Korea is basically just like Japan Part Two, kind of a thing. Like we like the stuff that's coming from there. Like their music is like getting really popular and everything, and we're culturally very different. But at the same time, there's a lot of things that we like. We all like video games. We all like anime, and there's another way to feel like a cohesive culture, right? That doesn't have to do with like shit that opportunist national ultra nationalists or like white supremacists can take, right? Like,
Well, what's binding those different countries together is liberalism, capitalism, and democracy. I mean, that is what those societies have that is in common with our societies, even
right,
though they're very different.
right.
So, I mean, if you want the entire world to be liberal, capitalist, and democratic, I'm okay with that.
Well, let's move in that direction then. I mean, honestly, because I'm willing to put up with a little bit of capitalism if it means that we can move in that direction. Um, I don't think that it's ideal, and I don't think that we couldn't have gotten there another way. But ultimately, you know what? I know that I haven't proven my point. I know that socialists haven't proven their point, and yeah, it's not on you to like prove it to everybody else. You know, like uh, capitalism is the thing that has worked the best. We're not going to leave this, local maxima just because, like, no, guys, I swear there's a better one over there. You know, and you just have to go on my word. I'm fine with
Yeah,
that.
like I'm not one of those kind of people that does not critique capitalism, that thinks it's perfect. It very clearly isn't, but I do think it's the best we've got so far. I do think it's better than socialism. I do think it's better than fascism. I think liberalism is the like, until we hit the point where we actually invent the Star Trek replicator and we can make goods like out of thin air or out of energy. I think there will be a game changer once we have that. But up
Yeah,
until that point, I think
but what if those
capitalism is.
capabilities like get invented by a corporation who then just owns them, and they can replicate shit, but they choose not to because they can extract goods from us because of it.
Well, that's the thing with parallel development, is that eventually somebody else will, in fact, invent a similar device, and eventually somebody will invent a device that they have no problem with sharing to other people. Like that is the decentralized nature of being an individualist, is that 50 people can all invent the same invention, and it only takes one of them to share it. You know.
Yeah, no, and honestly, I operate in the open source space. Like, yeah, that's kind of how it works, right? Like, it's like Windows refuses to open up their software, so like Linux comes along. It's like, it's cool, we're free, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, like
But see,
completely.
that is a decentralized capitalist system. Even though it's free, it's still capitalist, because the idea is
Oh yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
have
But
competition.
that's just the one thing that I like wish that I could impress on you, that like, yeah, like I do think that decentralization is the way to go. Like I care more about that than, like, mind you, like if it was socialism by means of like, oh, there being like a strong state that forces it on everybody, like let me tell you straight up, like that's not going to work. My dad is Cuban. Like I
Mhm.
have, like I've been to Cuba during like the el periodo especial, the special period, like I know how bad it is in Cuba, which is not even one of the places where it was the worst. Um, Definitely doesn't work. I don't want a strong government trying to ascribe how the economy should run, which once again, the market is not just beholden to capitalism. It's just like a natural, like it's an emergent behavior of us humans, and like it was gonna emerge regardless. So I don't see that a centralized group of people like saying what should go is going to be ideal ever. Like absolutely not. I think that the socialism that I kind of want to see is just simply the ones where like we, the people, just have more of a say, in what our government is actually doing, right? And kind of like your thing, just imagine it's like all of us, whatever that means to you. Like it is nebulous. Just I want it to be a little bit more open, but absolutely not a strong government. Like I'm not done with authoritarianism.
Yeah. See, I don't think you can actually implement that without a strong government, because there's always going to be people who disagree. And I think that is where the libertarians kind of have it right. Is like the libertarians aren't anti-capitalist at all, but they are anti-corporatist, and they kind of foresee the whole. I want to own guns and smoke weed. Leave me alone, government. Leave me alone, corporation. Like that's kind of the meme libertarianism. That's kind of what it is, and that sounds completely acceptable to me.
The thing is that can slide into feudalism because once again, like if you can just take whatever you want, right? Like it's like, okay, well, all of a sudden you can't work this land anymore because I decided to start it myself. Like it's hard to determine how people will interact. what I'm kind of like leaning towards is just like you're saying that like you can't establish socialism without like forcing it on people. I think to a certain degree that's right, and when it starts getting to that point, um, I no longer think that it's a good thing. I don't think it's the right kind of socialism. I think that it's something that we should all be comfortable with. And since we know that's probably never going to happen, right? Like we can just push towards that, and that'll at least give us all more independence and more say as to what happens to our government. So if you want to call that like, I don't know, sock them or whatever, like it, it's kind of like, yeah, I understand that, like bad actors will want to be bad actors, and I understand that people will have differing opinions regardless of bad actors or not. So like, it's kind of compromise. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like for me, it just seems like, if you limit government power, you obviously make it democratic, but you limit its power. So like, what's the good example? A gang rape is democracy in action, which is technically true. You have 10 guys who gang rape a woman. Well, their 10 votes outweigh the woman's one vote. But at some point, like democracy can't be the final, the final arbiter of power. There has to be something else there that goes beyond democracy, because you can't simply vote to take away somebody else's rights. And so like that's why I disagree with democratic socialism, because fundamentally that is what it is. The liberal conception of the state is that the state should be as small as possible and exist only to enforce people's rights. So if someone robs from you, the state exists to find the robber, and then they have a justice system, and then they pay the money, or they go to jail, whatever the case is. But the state exists to enforce the rights of the people, but otherwise it leaves them alone. And I think that that's probably the best case scenario for humanity.
Well, if that's the case, I'm happy to move in that direction. Like I said, like it's up to us to sell whether or not socialism in the way that I'm describing even works. Like we're not going to get anywhere near there without getting a lot of people on our side, right? And right now, nobody's on our side. So yeah, it's ultimately on us. Like honestly, if you want to just like dismiss socialism for now because of that, like yeah, I'm cool with that, because I'd rather see where we agree and move in that direction than just make it uncomfortable for everybody and like make everybody think that like we're all getting divided and all this bullshit. Like ultimately at the end of the day, we like both watch anime. I keep assuming that's why you have that name, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Like, yeah, we both watch anime. We probably play video games. A lot of us have families, and we care way more about that than we care about what Trump does or doesn't do. We have a lot more in common. Like, I mean, in a human sense, right? Like all of us as a race, and more locally, just because we have like similar interests, and like that's way more important than like it's way overshadowed in politics. And dude, there's a lot of good that we can do. If we just find like the places where we're willing to agree and like work in that direction.
No, I completely agree. Like that's why I sent you that list of like 100 things that Trump has done, because even though Trump is not my ideal candidate, I can at least point out instances where things have become demonstrably better while he's been president. Some of them you can actually, say that he did them, like he signed the bill or he signed the executive order or whatever it is. So it's not
Right.
all evil, And
Right.
And like if I consider the best possible state to be the liberal night watchman state that is strong enough to enforce people's rights, but small enough that it will not oppress people, and it simply lets the people decide what kind of life that they want to live, and that's what the state does. And then Trump is doing these things that at least is incrementally getting us closer to that ideal. Even though I'm center left, I would vote Trump in this election. That's just how I feel about it. Like even though I consider myself to be like a little bit left of center, I would choose Trump over like the neoliberal Joe Biden, who really just wants like an increasing expansion of both state and corporate power in this like interweaving, interlocking mesh that just covers all of human life. I don't like that kind of system. I don't like it when the socialists do it. I don't like it when the fascists do it. I don't like it when the neolibs do it. The idea should be that government leaves people alone, not that government gets more involved in people's life.
Yeah, no, and I think before Trump, I would have never understood that resistance, right?
Mhm.
And now I do. Like that sounds fair to me. Like yeah, that's what one thing represents to you, and that's what the other thing represents to me. For me, like Trump represents, white supremacy and scariness, and for you, socialists represent, like government centralized power tells you what to do, scariness, and
Mhm.
yeah, like that's not like we're way better off just like focusing on the things that are not that and like figuring out how we can, meet our mutual interests.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like if things continue the way that they did before the pandemic, obviously, if there are actual white supremacists in the United States and they're growing, that has to be dealt with. Like, if there are actual neo Nazis, they have to be dealt with too. People who say that they don't, I think they're idiots. But like, if things continue on the trajectory that they were on before the pandemic with Trump, I honestly think you guys will be fine. The economy was actually getting better. Things were slowly, incrementally improving in the United States up until the pandemic. So I honestly think you guys probably have it. It's not going to be the end of the world.
Well, I know, and I think that you get right that Trump is a populist movement. That's what I had missed initially, right? Like I thought it was just like a right wing movement. No, no, it's a populist movement. So yeah, it speaks about a lot of disaffected, mostly white people, right? Like who are like, hey, dude, like, didn't we used to be like really awesome back in the 50s? I want to get back to that, right? And that disaffection, made them think, like in my opinion, like they're wrong, obviously, but I mean, that's obviously what I think, but they made them think like, hey, Trump represents that. For me, he doesn't represent that, but he did move him in a direction that they think, like for example, you're getting like the what is it called, like Wall Street and the swamp or whatever out of government. Like we definitely did move in that direction. No, in fact, Trump represents the fact that a big portion of the right wants to move in that direction, where we don't have these corporate people like forcing us to do shit, like seizing government power and shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously,
Yeah.
us on the left are, I mean, at least the people who are kind of nebulously, in my general area, like we are like that too. So we're like strongly on the libertarian side, all of us, right, of the political compass or whatever. Not that that thing is perfect or anything, and we should focus on that. Like I think there's a bigger chance for a coalition between like left and right on the libertarian side than there is for like crossing the threshold when we get to authoritarianism, because then at that point you really are talking about like, well, which authority, this authority or this authority? I think the more that we decentralize shit, the more that we make it like a, you know what the libertarians want, at least we'll be in that direction of, we're like, we know that we're not being controlled by the other, and there's more room for, you know agreement or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Nope. I think I know what you mean. Yeah. So I'm like half hour late, so I have to go.
Man, thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. But yeah, that list of 100 things, like, check it out, because
I will.
there's some legitimately good stuff on that list. There, like, some things are things that like Trump and Obama did, so like Trump just didn't reverse the good that Obama had done, so fair enough. Some things are like, the Congress, like both sides of Congress did it, and then Trump didn't impede it, so he signed it. Like, so he didn't impede it, so he signed it. Like, there are definitely instances where it's not all Trump, but some of these are definitely Trump's successes, and at least a lot of them he had like a hand in. So it's not like Trump has been destroying America and everything's terrible. No, it's not actually not that bad, but by the numbers, by the metrics. So check that list
Well,
out, and
I'll check it out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I've got to go, so I'm gonna hit the button right now to take us off. So thanks for being here, man.
I appreciate it a lot, man. That's fun.
Yeah, yeah. All right, see you later, everybody.